We are live now.
It is on, okay. As soon as the, thing is set, we'll start. Okay, being 7:01, I'd like to call the Arundel Planning Board to order, June 27th, Mildred L. Day School. I'd like to start with a roll call.
John McHenry,
Bob Kuhn,
Roger Moore,
Rich Ganong.
Tad Redway.
planner, and we do have both some applicants and some of the public. Thank you for being here today. Today we're going to look at the approval of minutes for May 30th. Look at a current application on Thunder Drive subdivision expansion. We'll move into some proposed revisions to the land use ordinance, specifically for downtown business district 2, and hopefully we'll get to townhouse corner district. Have a planner's report, any other business of the board, public comment. As a matter of course, the board generally will allow the public the opportunity to talk as we move through these things. If you will, just raise your hand and I'll get to you as soon as I can. So the approval, we'll start with the approval of the minutes, May 30th.
Move to accept.
I'll second.
Any other discussion by the board? All in favor? Okay, unanimous. Minutes of May 30th as written. Current application under subdivision expansion. Sylvain Terrio is the owner and applicant. We just had the good fortune to traverse your land. Is there other information you'd like to present to the board tonight?
The only thing that maybe we didn't say is that we were told that we should apply for approval with Inland Fishery, Department of Inland Fishery. I did that this week and they responded to us and said that they, for the period of time to do the work, instead of being July 15th to October 2nd, I had asked to extend it to November. I think it was 15th I asked for because we were wanting to make sure that we didn't run out of time. And he came back and said, well, he was concerned because there was wild trouts there and other, fishes in that streams, I guess. So he said instead of pushing back the period to October, he said that the work would be allowed from July 1st instead of July 15th. So July 1st until October 2nd, which it doesn't really help us much, but.
Were they going to give you anything in writing?
They did.
They
emailed me that, and of course he's also saying that he's, wants to know more about the sizing of the culverts, and which I forwarded that email to Paul Gadwas. So.
And
Did you send copies of the email or print copies for Tad?
To Tad, no, but I
Yeah.
can.
yeah, he should have that for record.
Yeah.
Okay, Ted.
Mr. Chairman, for the record also, the applicant has applied for and received a Tier 1 permit for the stream crossing.
Yeah.
You already have that in hand. DEP has forwarded a copy of that to me, so I have that on record. If the board would like a copy of that, I will certainly make copies of it, but it's a standard Tier 1, nothing
Okay.
special about it.
Okay. So you guys are waiting right now for your topos, the grading, the sizing for your culverts.
Permit by rule, he's
To
only
get over
holding
that
on
stuff. Wow.
because he needs the flood plan from Paul and
Well, payment, topo,
topo
Side
and all that, yeah.
We pretty well went over all of the items during the site walk. They're totally familiar with, obviously, with the wetlands. They have the permit. Some of the other, I gave down my notes on, I may miss something. Some verification, I think, later on in the process for the fire protection in that cistern that was approved in the original plan, we think is there. setback. We weren't sure if there was anything special from the railroad, but what was proposed out there looked more than adequate, where they're planning on the upper hill. Grading on the property is good. Again, it's going to depend on that topo and how far you have to encroach. And I think at the very first meeting, Ted had really thought that having that looked at from that cluster subdivision might be in your best interest back there, and I just encourage you to do that.
There was some question, and you might have the answer to that, but if they do the fill of that area, it's gonna take a lot of earth moving, a lot of earth moving. Do they, if you're doing a development, do you need a special earth moving permit, or is that part of the development?
It's part of the project.
Part of the project. So you don't have to worry about that aspect.
No, you just have to review it as part of the
Right.
subdivision process.
Mr. Chairman, something I thought of afterwards or anything else. And I don't know if it's something that the applicant has to consider or anything else, but turn out under prior project, I think for safety, there was, along the railroad tracks or anything else, there was some type of barrier or anything else, not for sound, but for safety, so that somebody may not cross the railroad tracks, go under or about. I don't know if that's applicable or not. I'm just throwing it as a thought, I mean, because,
I'm
you
not-
know, everybody else who lives along the railroad tracks down towards Biderica Hill, they do not have a, barrier. I mean, of course, it depends on how far the house is, if you have all your wooded area and everything else, so that would turn out cover as a barrier in itself.
I believe that is the railroad's responsibility. I think in other places, like, I'm thinking of Old Orchard Beach, the railroad has actually built the barriers.
More a lot of times that was sound barrier, but I was
No, no,
just,
the chain link fence and that kind of thing. But I don't know for sure.
We were mentioning Gregoire down the road.
yeah.
It was up to the railroads. What
Yeah.
They wanted this,
I-
it's up to them to the safety.
I didn't know, I mean, I'm just throwing this as a preliminary thought.
Right.
I wasn't aware of any requirements.
I didn't remember, turn out when we had,
Might give you a
his
fence if
sons,
you want.
there was something there, or was it? Because I know they did not cross the railroad tracks, but they had owned property onto the other side. But I mean, I'm just thinking of, whatever.
I'm unsure about that, Marty. I know the railroad in Old Orchard Beach, as John had mentioned, did in fact put up the barriers
Yeah.
primarily because of the transient population not aware of Maine railroad law and the ability of the railroad to actually arrest and prosecute anybody trespassing on their right-of-way, which they do in Old Orchard Beach. And of course, the massive number of people in Old Orchard Beach that may wander onto the tracks, and in fact do, and have historically wandered across the tracks in an effort to make a shortcut.
Yeah.
And of course, when speeds went from 15 miles an hour to 40 miles an hour through there, it changed the dynamic. So the railroad was responsible. If we look historically at the railroad, even here in Arundel along the Eastern Railroad, they put in a special fencing the entire length. But I have not seen Boston and Maine, or what is now Pan Am, do that throughout the whole town. We have a number of places where we don't have railroad putting that up. In fact, I would say most of the railroad line through Arundel does not
Is
have
open.
fencing. It's completely open.
But it's not populated either, per se.
No,
Just as a thought, as a question.
Okay, Bud, you had comment on that?
What is the distance between the house and the railroad track? How many feet?
Oh, there can be a buffer, when we leave a buffer there.
No, but I mean, what's the distance feet?
The farthest house, how many feet is it
We
gonna
don't know yet, but it's gonna be at least 100 feet, 150 feet.
But you want, so you're gonna have, it's not gonna be lawn from the house.
No,
So you're gonna have the trees for
buffer
the.
left there.
Then that makes its own buffer.
Which, come back to that, Mr. Gregoire, he cut everything down, so Maine and Boston came up and they put a fence in. Because it's all cleared up.
Right.
But I mean, if you leave 50 feet of buffer, I don't think they're gonna come up with a fence there, or if they do, well, it's up to them.
Are there any other special requirements of the stream protection ordinance that they need to be aware of?
This is a shoreline overlay district. It's 250 feet from the district itself is 250 feet from the upland edge of Gulf Millbrook and associated wetlands. And the actual setback from that upland edge is 100 feet by our shoreline overlay district regulations, and that's why it's going to be critical for those buffers to be identified on the map. The only dynamic that could change that would be the floodplain, but
You got too
I
much
don't
of a
see
valley.
I don't see the flood, I actually see the wetlands being in a larger area
Yeah.
than the floodplain. And a lot of those wetlands, as you probably noticed in the field, are actually upland wetlands. They're not associated with the stream. They come into the stream, they discharge in the stream, but they don't emanate from the stream. So those would not, for instance, the wetlands on the bluff, as you, right near the, near the hammerhead. Yeah, that flat area there. Those are upland wetlands. Those are not associated with the brook. So those would not be part of the shoreline overlay district. But that's it. I mean, we did, the consideration was, well, multiple floodplain, stream protection district, no, the shoreline overlay district trumps it all. So we don't have triple jeopardy. I think the issue, Mr. Chairman, if I might,
Yeah.
would be the issue of how to deal with the cluster. You and I had that conversation earlier in the day, that our ordinance is somewhat contradictory in that in section 6 it requires that any project 4 lots or greater to be clustered in accordance with section 8.4. However, when we get to section 8.4, it encourages clustering. So the question is the applicant required to cluster? Absolutely, without question. And that, I suppose, is the
I
issue.
remember in the past we have encouraged, we haven't required.
And it's, the whole purpose of clustering was to give applicants and people with smaller houses, it can apply to the bigger ones, an opportunity to perhaps get in an additional house or two. So,
Well, that wasn't the whole purpose, it had a dual purpose,
Well, yeah.
that plus preserve open land.
preserve open land, but that was the mechanism to allow that to happen. So from saving in this case, it probably doesn't save a lot of the roadway and infrastructure and all of that, because the vast majority of that cost is going to be across your wetland area. But again, I think they encourage to look at it from a cluster. It might be in your advantage, to your advantage. Otherwise, they wanted to have the full 2-acre lots. Again, meeting all of these setbacks, it may be difficult even up there with what you have, 250 feet back. I think we were probably 100 feet where we were looking at the first lots after we got up over that mountain, where you thought the grading might take place. So I think that's a decision that the applicant, and by our ordinance, I think that's what the ordinance does, is give them that flexibility.
Okay, I wanted to make sure that the board had ruled on that and that we were in consensus on that.
We should check, that's what I recall anyway, that we'd always given the applicant the option of clustering and required it, but I can't guarantee that. We really shouldn't see if that is possible.
Right.
Well, that's what I was looking at, let's see where it requires it.
Well, it's just that the tone that it says it. No, it's not in 8.4. It's in 6.
Yeah, in 6 it says.
It's in the minefield.
Over 4 will.
6.
We usually remember those things, do you think?
6.3.8.4. It says all
Okay.
residential subdivisions of more than 4 lots shall be, which is a requirement.
Okay,
Shall
wait.
be clustered in accordance with section 8.4.
Okay, so it shall be in accordance with 8.4. Now you go to 8.4, and here's
Right.
where it kind of gives them an option. in the 8.4. So if you read 8.4,
No, I think 8.4 would allow you to cluster if you had less than 4. But 6.3 says if you've got 4 or more, you must cluster. So I think the 8.4 would apply if you had less than 4.
Well, I think 8.4 applies to all clustered developments.
Well, yes.
That's the standards that you use for clustered development, period.
correct.
So, those are the ultimate standards that one must follow, and it's an encouragement, but the problem is 6.3 says thou shalt.
But
So we have
6.3
so it's almost like we have a contradiction. It says thou shalt cluster in accordance with 8.4, and 8.4 says, well, you don't have to necessarily cluster. It's an optional thing.
I'm not sure I agree with that. 6.3 says all residential subdivisions of more than 4 lots. So if you have 5 lots or more, you must cluster, and you don't have the option. But if you have 4 or less, then you have the option of clustering it. And if you choose to option, then you have to meet the 8.4 standards. Now, Sylvain, you're going to have how many houses back there? 4?
4 lots for
For
now.
4, so you could cluster, my understanding is that you could cluster it if you want to, but you don't have to.
Well, you gotta take into consideration those units that are already there, and it's part of, this is just another phase. Just like you have to take into account an original building on the land when you're looking at the lots of the subdivision. So,
Yeah,
But-
this is more than
but
4 lots.
If that's the case, then I don't know how he's ever going to be able to cluster those, because you have to cluster including those two that are already there.
You got the river, you got the,
That's-
No.
That would be an existing
No.
condition.
that's existing.
But that's,
no, but
but he
clustering,
says more than 4.
but clustering gives applicants opportunity to reduce the size of the lots, should they choose. They can have, my understanding of our regulation, they can have a 2-acre lot, then they can have a 1-acre lot in a cluster screen that's 1 acre less than what's needed, so that's 1 acre that has to be set aside. They can have another one that's a half an acre, that's an acre and a half that has to be set aside. The next one could be 2 or 1 or whatever the applicant chooses to best utilize their land. The difference between what the lot size is, and that's it, and that's in there, what the lot size is and what is proposed, what the minimum is, it's that difference that has to be set aside for open space. So there's a lot of flexibility, which gives them an opportunity, in my opinion, to potentially, we don't know how far this grade is, to add one, maybe not. Maybe in the grander scheme of things, you can only get in 3 units, who knows? Until you actually do that work, you won't know. You had a comment?
Yeah, I have a question. If it becomes cluster and does it have to become like an association where the,
You have to open an association.
right, so the, what, how do you call it, the open space is, is becoming
Shared
like
by
part of,
everybody.
shared by everybody, yeah.
Correct.
Yes or no?
Yes, you would have to do that. And you're going to need to do that anyways because you're going to have a private way.
Homeowners
Unless you're-
association.
Yeah, the association for maintenance of the private way, unless your intent is to build it to town standards and ask the town to take that road.
Would that be an option?
That's always an
the other
option.
thing.
Whether the town will do it at town meeting is always the issue. But
But we
that
have
is
to
an
go
option.
forward with it,
Absolutely.
saying that it's gonna be our responsibility, and then we can present it to the town as you wanna take it.
Yes.
It,
But you would probably go to a higher level of construction than you're contemplating right now. But you're close to that threshold anyways.
and you want to make sure in the construction process that that's verified by one of the town engineers while it's being built, otherwise you've got a backstep. That can be costly.
Well, it'll involve a much more intense
Inspection.
inspection process. It will. But you've already been through that to a degree. You did have the town engineer did have a
Yes.
resident engineer out
But
there.
the first phase was, there's no shoulders, but we paved it the width,
Right.
so it should be still the town specs, put it that way, it's inspected. It's no shoulders, but it's paved wider.
You probably have to, in order to go to the town, obviously, you'd have to do some retrofitting to the existing road to make sure that it met those town standards. It's still gonna be a local road, so it's gonna be a 22-foot, I think. I'd have to look at the specs, I can't recall. But the shoulders will have to be installed, so you'd have to go back and install those shoulders in accordance with the town standards. If you chose to go that direction.
Yeah, see, one of the hard parts here in trying to give some guidance and say where you're at without having an actual plot and with you not having the exact location where the houses are, where the septic is, et cetera, it's kind of, it's all if, you know, so our job is to review what you give us, so hopefully we're giving you enough information to get you to, when you make your decisions along those decision points, that it should go fairly easy, you ought to be there.
Well, I guess in order to go forward with this, I mean, I guess we need to know, do we go forward as seeing it as cluster or not? Because Paul's got to redo the plans if it's gonna be clustered.
Well,
But you still-
Paul's gonna be the one to tell you if Paul is who you're using, he'll be the one to tell you if it's to your advantage or not. Can you gain or can you not? Should you go that way or should you not?
But he has, like you
Quite
said,
creative, and he knows all of those rules.
but you still need all the mapping first to determine what you can do. Without your topos and this, that, and everything else, you just looking at your pocket and reading the crystal ball and say, I hope, I wish, we play. I mean, until you have all the facts and figures, you can't do anything yet.
Did you have additional comments?
I think that I agree with the applicant that the board must make a determination on what is an apparent contradiction in the ordinance.
Because when we call Paul this week, he's gonna say, well, what are you doing? You're going for a cluster or are you going for the 4 lots that you were originally looking for, you know? So we need to have an answer, I think.
When I first started looking at this.
And is this gonna change the application, sorry, excuse me, is it gonna change the application for the tier 1 too, you know, and
For a DEP, you've got that tier 1.
The question I have relates to the 2 units on the top of the hill. Are they part of this subdivision? If they're part of this subdivision, then it has to be clustered, according to 6.3. If they are not part of the subdivision, and there's only 4 houses, then it does not have to be clustered.
Read the section in 6.8, because it says it has to be clustered in accordance with 6.8.
No, 6.3A4, it says that all residential subdivisions of more than 4 lots shall be clustered in accordance with section 8.4.
So now you go, shall be in accordance with 8.4. Now read 8.4.
But we have to address the issue first, because he's planning on putting 4 houses back there. If they're standalone, I don't think 8.4 applies. But if the 2 houses up front are part of the subdivision, then I think 6.3 does apply, and he must cluster, he has no choice. And I think that's the question that we're faced with. Are those first 2 that he's already built part of this subdivision? If they are, I don't see how he gets around 6.3 being forced to cluster them.
6.3 only tells him he's got to cluster in accordance with 8.4.
No, it says all residential subdivisions of more than 4 lots shall be clustered.
In accordance with.
That's right.
So then you read 8.4.
If I read 8.4, which part of 8.4? 8.4B1, all developments shall meet the Arundel subdivision regulations but are exempt from this requirement relating to minimum lot size, property line setbacks, street frontage.
That's for clustering.
Right,
Okay.
but my point is, do they have to cluster? If they don't have to cluster, 8.4 is moot. They can do it if they want, but they don't have to. But if they have to cluster, then they have to follow 8.4, and I think that's the question that they're asking. do we have to cluster? Because that's gonna affect the tier one, it's gonna affect all of the other stuff.
Well,
Am I wrong?
I,
No, it sounds logical.
I,
I think we need a critical reading of that somewhere. We need to get a good opinion of that.
for each one of them, Bud, you had a comment?
I have a question here. I thought there was somewhere along the way, there's a law that if anything that's 5 years or older on an existing lot that's been there more than 5 years, does not come on a new subdivision law.
You have to wait
This
for
is like
5
this-
years before
But
you
it hasn't
can
been 5 years.
before you can re-subdivide, but
Right.
it's still part of the
So I see,
same.
when they put theirs 2 years, or 10 years ago, whatever, they didn't go through a subdivision because only 2 house lots. So those 2 house lots there don't come in that new regulation, are they?
That's my question. 'cause I-
Yeah, they would, because it was actually done 2 years ago.
So it's not a 5-year law.
And
But
it's,
those-
we're
those
re-subdividing
houses-
one of the lots, is what we're doing. It was one cut out, and what we did was a private way. That's what we did, it was the private way. And so it's a re-subdivision of.
Oh, okay. Oh,
Within
okay.
that 5-year
Oh.
period. So I think it's common scheme of development under those circumstances. The issue is that, as the board has stated, one part of the regulations that say you shall subdivide, you get to the other section, it says you have the option of you shall cluster, and the other part says here are the options to cluster.
I think he has the option.
See, I don't think he has the option,
I do.
based on 6.3. And
I
that's,
think he does because it turned out also too, there was the idea of the amount of land, okay?
okay,
Usually when you turn on with your clustering and everything else, you have your open space, but turn he has enough land for the subdivision to follow through on.
Well, with the minimum set aside that were required in there, should you elect, and I brought in the new one, I didn't bring in our standing one. Ted, could you read those points? We had gone over 2 or 3 of these things earlier that seemed to say this was optional. This is not mandatory.
Yeah, let me go to 8.4 again. Let's see, the purpose says that it's to allow for flexibility, basic requirements, all development shall meet the Arundel setback, subdivision regulations, but exempt from this ordinance's requirements related to minimum lot size, property line setbacks and street frontage, total area of the reduction below the required minimum shall be at least equal to the amount of dedicated open space in the developments. Minimum acreage of land is 6 acres, site plan shall identify the location of all proposed roads, blah, blah. To determine the maximum number of dwelling units permitted, that's basically net residential density. No single group of dwellings that are attached either horizontal or vertical shall contain more than 4 dwelling units, that's for multifamily. Residential structures shall not be located closer than 30 feet to each other. These are all design standards for a cluster subdivision. Let's see, just looking for something else we were looking in here. I don't, you guys might remember the requirement for a community water system?
Well, there used to be for both central water
Central
and
Right.
central sewer. Those were changed at
We
last
changed those at the last
2
time.
public meetings
You
ago.
gotta turn out.
We did address this because it didn't give that sort of flexibility. The intent, as I recall, and I think as John stated, maybe we need a critical review for you. But the intent was to allow landowners that flexibility. As it says, the whole purpose of that cluster subdivision was to allow for that flexibility. It's a 2-acre area, but you can do it on an acre and set aside an acre. You can do it on a ½ acre and set aside 1½ acres to save in some of those.
right, and we did. The problem I have is that when I look at 6.3 and it says you must do it, I look at A4, it says these are the design standards that you use to do the cluster. It doesn't, to me, it does not appear to be an either-or situation.
So you would say that then we have no regular subdivisions in our ordinance, all the rest of the subdivision ordinance is mute if there's over 4 units in it.
If there's more than 4 units, that's correct. They have, according to this, they have to be clustered.
See, I don't think that was ever the intent.
It may not have been, but that is what we've ended up
If
with.
you read that 63884, and you just stop right before it says which section A4, what Rich is saying, it says all residential subdivisions of more than 4 lots shall be clustered. That's it. If you stop right there, that's the law.
Oh, well, if you stop there, but it goes on to tell you.
It says in accordance with 8.4. 8.4 is nothing but the design standards of that cluster.
Telling you how to do it. A4 does not tell you that you can, it's telling you how to do it. 6384 is telling you you have to do it.
No.
But that, if it tells you you must do it, it defeats the purpose, which is flexibility.
Well, it
That's
gives you
not
some
flexibility.
it does give you some flexibility because it does not require you to have a common water supply.
It says,
You could get a hydrological study done that indicates that it's going to be less expensive to allow individual water supplies. But you're right, basically it takes away that choice, which leads me back to that whole question of, is this a 6-unit or a 4-unit?
But the fact is, under the water system, if you turn around and have a comment, then you have to almost set up your own water district. That was one of the other things.
Yeah, that's all gone.
That's gone.
Yeah, that is all gone. That's not it.
I think the flexibility is just what it says, design and layout.
Yeah?
So that saying that it turned out, everything else that has to be built in town has to be a cluster unit.
Oh, okay, so since there is no, if you interpret it that way, since there is no amount specified that they would have to reduce, they could reduce one by
Yeah.
10% and save 10% of one lot.
Yeah.
The only thing it says is that the developments located in the rural zones, the dedicated common open space shall be equal to 50% of the total acreage in the development. So if he has 12 acres in the development, 6 of them have to be open. But he could,
Exactly.
he could make 10 of them open and he could put up 4 houses on 2 acres. I'm not sure I think that's a wise idea, but
No, it's right. You gotta set aside 6 acres. That's fine.
Yeah.
So if you put 6 acres clustered, that leaves 6 acres that we can have 6 lots.
It's based on net residential density, whatever the density was.
So it's 2, but it's
But that,
2 acres.
You have to do it by net residential density, which means you take 15% of the land for impervious surface, plus all the non-buildable land defined as hydric soils, identified wetlands and streams, all that area, and that's all subtracted from the total acreage divided by 2 acres. We don't use net residential density except in this situation and in subdivisions. We use net residential density, we use it in no other circumstance. So you'd have to do net residential density calculation, and that gives you your density. So I'm not sure you're going to get, if you can get an extra lot from your net residential density, then this will let you put it in. But if you can't, which might be suspect that you could, you can't get an extra lot as a result of that.
But get back to the 4 lots that they originally were looking at.
Yeah.
except
That's not
that
gonna take,
they've got the 2 lots at the top of the hill. Which is where I was going, because of the 2 lots at the top of the hill, they have to do a cluster. But how much land is at the top of the hill? And those-
on the top.
the whole thing's
Yeah.
12, right?
Is the whole thing 12 or just the new addition 12?
New
New
is
additions.
The new is 12, and
Let
the old one was how big?
Let the record show that John has got the part early this evening. He did advise the chair earlier, and it's 7:35.
Okay.
You got 3 acres at the top?
It was like almost 15-acre lot.
Okay.
The whole,
The whole thing is 15, so if you got 12 on either side of the brook, you have 3 this side.
I wonder how much the wetlands takes up.
Those,
Sorry,
the
this
one
is
that,
R2, isn't it? Or is this
Yeah, this
R3?
is our.
R1.
That's not
Wait a minute.
It's R2.
That was out too.
R2.
It's R2. That's not a rural zone. Is it? I don't know what a rural zone is.
this is in R2.
Well, it's not,
There's no definition.
anything with an R is rural.
Residential.
No, R means residential.
R means residential.
R means residential.
could it be 3?
Might be 3. That might be the problem. Yeah, it's R2 across the
Log
street.
cabin is R2, but that could be R3 or close.
Well, if you have 2 up at the top, and there was only 3 acres up there,
And you
Then
turn
it could
around and put
have been a
a
2 acre
put a duplex there, so you can turn and get 3 in. So you can get 3 in with the duplex plus 1, so it turn around,
so it must have been a 1 acre. It must be 1 acre.
that's what I'm saying.
That's R2.
Duplex plus 1, you turn around 3.
Remember, he just did 2 lot subdivision up there. One was he carved out 1 lot, and the rest of it was left to the duplex, right? As I recall.
Yes, the duplex has the
The
rest. of the
duplex
house.
has the rest of the land, so it's a re-subdivision of 1 of the lots, is what we're talking about. The other thing that I find a little concerning in this is that, you know, this cluster development existed prior to 2008, correct?
Yes.
But this requirement came in 2008 for a 4 lot. So it sounds like this was imposed at a later date.
Existed prior to 2008.
Yeah, it says amended 2008, which meant it existed prior to.
Okay.
Just too money at the water sewer.
So we just throw it up in the air and see what falls?
No, we have to make
No,
a,
we have to make a decision on this.
well, reading the letter of it, it does say it has to, and I agree with that, it does say that it has to be clustered. The 2 at the top, and especially since there's gonna be a redivision of one of those are included. And there's, if I could go the other way, I sure would. So, looking at the regulation the way it is, it goes back to your original recommendation that you really have them look at it from a cluster subdivision aspect. You're probably not gonna lose anything. There's a potential, and I think I shared that with you at the game. Maybe not, and it depends on what does have to be subtracted out.
It's really a function of what the net residential density shows. That's what it really shows. That's the issue. So Paul knows how to do the net residential density calculations.
So cluster or not, we could get at least those 4 lots,
Assuming the net residential density shows that, yeah.
and maybe one more.
The only thing, remember one thing about the net residential density is it is different than we usually do lot development in Arundel, in that we don't take into account eliminating or subtracting unsuitable soils, whereas net residential density does, which means you would be eliminating the soils within the floodplain, wetland soils and the floodplain soils. Probably not the floodplain, hydric soils. It's hydric soils. So technically floodplain soils are not hydric. See how much, oh, sorry.
Yeah, the stream, that stream, where the stream is, or 2, I couldn't even tell if it was 1 or 2 down there
1,
at times.
it just splits up. It's like a bad fork, but you turn it all the joints together. I mean, just because you got a high spot, it's like a big sandbar.
So,
Well,
I guess,
Does it say the distance these houses has to be put in?
no,
So you can put them on each 1 acre lots. and keep the other back land open for.
Correct.
Yeah.
Oh,
Half an acre lot, quarter acre lot, as
Yeah,
long as you
whatever.
got all of the other.
That's where the flexibility comes in.
Two neighbors if you want. Right?
Correct.
So that's not too bad.
Well,
No,
they-
Pat was saying that he's gonna deduct the wetland and all
Yeah, well, yeah,
of that.
yeah.
So-
But you'd have to
Yes,
do
I
that in a standard subdivision. You have to do that in a
I know,
standard
but
subdivision.
so I'm thinking we may not end up having, it's not gonna be beneficial to have, a 1 acre lot compared to 2 acre lot, if you take all of that out.
However, your frontage, the amount of road that you have to build is gonna be considerably less. It can be up to half the length of road that you need to develop.
Still gonna make up the hill.
Still gonna-
Yeah, that's
Still
the easy part of the
You're not getting
construction.
across that brook.
I remember when you did the front, that came up too, that they tried to make it clustered and it was denied because there was no way that,
I would try to put 3 lots in the front, but cluster didn't exist, which the duplex was
so
2
now we're
units.
like
Yeah.
in
Plus the other house was
between
3,
changing
the
the
other one
law.
was 4.
Of course, the other question is, how many duplexes can he put on the other side?
We're not putting any duplexes.
No, I'm just,
No.
Each unit becomes a unit, that gets back to the net residential density computation. I mean, that's a way to save, potentially. But again, I think that calculation is critical, and I think it's also critical for Paul to look at it for you. I know there's some cost involved with that, but that's the only way you're gonna be absolutely sure that you can get the 4.
That's right.
As I said, there is a potential for more, but that's only potential. It depends on what these other calculations come out to.
The downside could be 3 if they were 2 acre lots.
It's got nothing to do with the lot.
Well, yeah, if they want 2 acre lots and the net density says you don't have room for that.
Yeah, true. Okay.
I think we're gonna be speculating until such.
Until you get the that's what I said. Until we have the
can't do
actual
anything without
numbers,
the facts and figures.
there's no way to tell you 100%.
But it's gotta go cluster.
Yes.
So that's what we're gonna do.
That's a definite.
So let's put that on the list for review.
Oh, yeah. It's already on.
All right. Sorry if we weren't able to help you more, but those are the 2 main things. I think net residential density, that Paul look at that. And ideas for clustering after he gets that determination of the amount of land back there. And up front, I mean, that land up front counts.
It's part of the development.
Yeah, and because that becomes part of the development too, so
Well, the
that,
duplex, the 2 units is on 3 acres, so it's, you get more open space out of that one.
yeah, I mean, push it back or make it a little bit smaller. Because you gotta split it off at some point.
Well, it's also 150% for a duplex, so if you're reducing it by 1/2, it would be 1.5 acres instead of 3. 1 acre and 3/4.
You're just sharpening your pencil.
Yeah, but that's what, you have to start with the numbers in order to figure out what you can actually do. And that's why the confusion, everybody's trying to be helpful, but you can't be helpful until you actually know what the maximum allowable is on that land that is left. And then you would decide, well, we want to go from 2 acres to 1.5, or to 1, or however you wanted to rearrange those.
So basically what you're saying is that next meeting, whatever, Paul should be here and present his plans with the clustering. Is that what you suggest? Or
What I would suggest is get with Paul soon and see what his timetable is when he can get it. Once he gives you a date that he could attend the meeting, contact Ted and get on the agenda. Okay, there's no point in trying to schedule it for 2 weeks. Paul can get out here for
Right.
3 weeks. Okay, so have Paul look at it as soon as he can give you a date that he can give you some realistic numbers. Then get on the agenda and
I would assume Paul's gonna come in and talk to me.
Yes.
That's the usual.
Because I'm trying to push everything in his hands now, because my work is done, so.
So I would imagine Paul and I will be powwowing on this quite a bit before, for the
Next meeting.
yeah, for the next meeting.
Flexibility is the key. Be flexible with this.
Force him to be
Extend it.
flexible, yeah.
Yeah, wherever we can. All right, any other comments by anybody here today? Okay. That said, we want to thank you guys. Sorry that it's not clear until we get that. I'd like to move into proposed revisions to the land use ordinance. And we're going to start with use and design standards for District 2. Ted has some handout. Do you happen to have any copies, if any of the public wants?
Yeah.
If anybody needed something?
There you go. That feeling becomes so much. You need one? Bud, do you need one?
No, I got it.
You got them? Okay.
Okay, a lot of work has been done, a lot of comments have been made. Some of the areas we haven't actually come to decision from the board has kind of outlined, but each of those areas, so we'll try to deal with those the best we can this evening and make decisions as we go each point. I am going to turn the floor over to you, Ted, and let you walk us through it. Okay.
I think we've done a lot of seesawing on this, and we also haven't dealt with them in a little while, so I think we need to try to make some concrete decisions that I can proceed from to finish up this section of the ordinance, and so we don't have to, so we can get the entire DB section done, and I can start mapping it and finalize section 7, 2, and 3 of the proposed ordinance. We have very little to do in 7.1, and we do that, and then we have the other areas that we have to deal with, including the CCN district and a couple of other districts that we're looking at proposing some new business areas. We need to button up the DB1 and DB2 districts. I should say as an aside also that we have had, the EDC had a meeting with the consultant regarding the marketing and branding study. Is producing some statistical and some marketing results that will be presented to the planning board, to the selectmen by the EDC and the consultant on the 8th of July.
Let's try to attend if we
I
can.
would suggest that we will try to attend it, because although he's not going to be reviewing our work on this, specifically what he will be doing is providing some information that will help us determine whether we've been anticipating it correctly or we're going down the wrong path with some of our land use strategies that we've been doing last year.
And their meetings are at 7 o'clock as well?
That's correct.
Yeah.
Right, yes. And I mention that now, not to take it out of context, just to put it in perspective that as we do this, we will also want to see what, whether our assumptions coincide with that of the consultant. I think the first thing that's gone back and forth a number of times have been the issue of uses in the district. The district originally had a small set of uses, and we've expanded that considerably. And I had been a little confused as to what direction we're really going to go in terms of a number of things on uses. How the uses we're going to have in this that are going to be complementary to the DB1 district, what those are, and two, what uses, how they're going to be distinguished from the BI district. We have the set of uses on the page 7.3 on permitted uses. We've done it alphabetically now. And to help out, I've also had I've pulled out the definitions again out of section 3, the definition section, for those uses that we are listing in here. And I think we've got things pretty well covered. But you need to let me know whether or not I'm barking up the right tree, if I'm taking the right record on this. We have approximately 34 permitted uses, and then we have 11 conditional uses. We have no special exceptions. We haven't discussed that. I believe the board is not interested in special exceptions. So, and we're not looking at any PUDs. In this particular district, we'll be working off of 8.4 PUDs. But I still need some standard. I need to know certain limits, whether the limits that we've got in here are correct or are in accordance with what the board wants. So, looking down the permitted uses, is there anything that looks out of place to what we've talked about as a permitted use?
Yeah, one question right off the bat. I thought you turned out if this is all business zones or anything else, your residential, two families, multi-families.
Yeah.
I mean, I thought this is business.
Yep.
That's how we're,
I think we've stated all along that that residential would be permitted if it was subordinate to a business on the property.
yeah, but not necessarily a multifamily.
Well, if
I mean, well then let's put duplexes in and take all the businesses out. I mean, if you want, I mean, you keep crowding and crowding do's and don'ts.
Well, I think one of the reasons why we did that, Marty, and the reason I put the question mark next to multifamily was to bring up the very issue that you're bringing up. How much residential? One of the things we had discussed before was the issue of a planned unit development, the potential to allow a planned unit development in which you have a mixture of business and residential, where the residential is actually in support of business.
Security purposes or anything else, yes.
Well,
But I mean, yeah, because things change, and I mean, okay, you have somebody on site to turn out for security purposes or whatever, that's fine. But just turn out and have somebody else living there who has nothing related to the business.
Well, I was thinking in larger terms than that. I was thinking of a large planned unit development, not like we have at Atlantic Storage where you have a caretaker on the site. I was thinking of a large project. I didn't want to negate the possibility of a large project coming in which we had a campus environment, in which there were, let's say, offices, medical resources, and on-site residential. Single-family homes or multifamily homes or whatever that were part of this total project. New communities, many new communities all have this component of having both a mixture of residential and commercial, well-balanced and integrated. And the reason we were doing this was to try to ensure we didn't cut off that potential. I know this is a bad word, and the intent is not to open wounds, but if we look at the village center concept that was proposed, and we take the town's role in that out, and we look at that project, that's a project that probably the town would find very beneficial because it had a core of business and a business center, and then it had residences on the outside that would, basically be serviced by that core.
Yes, but those residents were not in the business zone. You're trying to put residents in a business zone. I mean, and if your business zone that you're having right now is, particularly when you're splitting it, the two zones up within 1,000 feet, how are you going to squeeze everything in there?
Well,
I mean,
this was to provide flexibility, and if we don't, I have put forward to you guys 2 PUD ordinance concepts, which you have rejected, and
Not all of us.
it appears to me, if the board agrees with you on this, then it appears to me that there will be no residential in the DB2 districts, in the DB1 or DB2 unless it's over the slope.
I think if we go back to the minutes, Marty, I sure understand your comments, but I believe there's been votes on that by the board to move this forward. And I think that's been clear that the majority of the board, felt that they wanted to have that flexibility for the town in case residents came in first. The opening of the businesses and the rest of that and the land that's going to be provided being so substantial that to have that component of some residential, which is secondary to the business side, would be beneficial to the business in the area.
See, that's the problem I have with it. If it's subordinate to the business, how can there be more than one residence on that property that would be subordinate to a business? The owner would live there, and he can only live, I can only
Or
live in
staff.
one place at a time.
We're talking a development, like,
What?
say you got a 50,000 square foot building that's coming in, okay? You could have 2 or 3 residences that could be subordinate. From
Right,
a
shift
development, standpoint, and the amount of businesses, maybe there's 5, 6, 8, 10, who knows? You know, we can what if this kind of to death, but as long as it's subordinate, as long as it's 40, and that was the discussion the board had, and I was kind of in between that discussion, but on that day, it said, well, as long as it's less than the business, what the business is going in, then it should be accepted. And the decision, and I can't remember which meeting now, we've had so many of them, but it was very clear, we talked at 51%, 49% in that meeting, and that's what was voted on.
Okay, I'll shut up.
No, Marty, they're
No,
good.
no, I'm just-
They're good points, and I understand your concern.
I
I
mean-
do, and I share it. However, I think we're outvoted that day.
but the fact is, this is all concept, this is wish, what, and everything else.
That's
But we're still chasing the cat around on, for what we have today. And we, you know, you wanna split up properties into 2 different zones or whatever else now. You can't even get one, and you wanna, okay, say we can put bigger businesses in, fine. But I mean, why turn it into residential? I mean, this is all wish, want, and everything else. We've wished and wanted everything for the last 25 years, and nothing's gotten done.
Well,
Exactly.
Maybe I'm misremembering.
Okay.
What I thought we had said was that there could be a separate building with one residence, but above the facility, above the store or whatever, you know, you put in a hardware store, you could have a couple of apartments above the store. But in terms of a separate building, I thought if it was a separate building, it was a single residence for the owner. That seems to be, I could be completely off, but
In
that
one
seems
of our-
to be what I...
What we took out, but what we went by, if you remember when we first started, and just to that one point, 'cause
Okay, yeah,
I can
that's-
remember that was in there. Remember when we went through legal review, a lot of the stuff, when we were dealing with all legally established, it was recommended that we kind of pull that kind of stuff out at this point. But for that single-family dwellings in this area, provided that unit is secondary to a business located on the site or is located on any floor except the first floor. So that meant it could be all residential on the second, third
Right.
floor.
But a separate building would have been a single-family residence,
No,
which is what I was thinking that we had said. But on the second floor, we didn't care, the first floor had to be a business. But above that, we didn't care.
Tell them what kind of business you wanna have on the second floor.
You can have that,
Yep.
and this doesn't change that.
Right.
Or you can have one building with residential up above it. This allows both. Is that correct? Or am I saying it wrong? Huh? That was the yeah.
Well, it's just-
I'm just going by what
and-
the discussion.
And I agree with that, it's just that when I read this and I saw the 2-family and multifamily, I think I had the same reaction Marty did. We're looking at multiple buildings with multiple families on that lot related to the business.
The obvious hope is that if you can attract the business, more businesses can come. Business begets business. So you want to make it as business friendly as you possibly can. Okay? Part of the difficulty the board struggled with was the concept of the development, Marty, as you know, of the character of the area, and how we got to the residential one was looking at some of the residents that already currently exist. And we weren't going to do anything to go against any of the residents here, or those that have businesses, to the best of our ability. And I think that's what the board tried to
Right.
balance out.
That's what I thought we had done.
And I think that the term support was the best that the board could come up with and agree on. Is that,
Yeah, and the
I mean, to
question
lower
was,
it,
if you want to look at the decision sheet, if you look over on the backside, I brought this issue up on residential restriction. How
Where
should
you
we
reading?
define the supporting threshold of residential uses, the primary businesses uses in DB2 district? Do you do it by floor area, by percentage of lot coverage, including associated accessory buildings, facilities, and grounds, by trip generation? Do it by any of those three factors. You can do it by others, but those are the three most logical. Trip generation is probably,
the easiest to compute.
yes and no, I'm not sure it's gonna achieve
With
the
the-
5149.
Yeah, and again,
Plus, remember one of the things we're also talking about, I mean, we have a use in here called congregate care housing. That involves residential. That's a vertically integrated, you know,
And it's a
healthcare
plan-
system
and it's a
involving
plan
cottages,
development.
involving, you know, multifamily living units, care assisted units, and finally, medical facilities. I mean, that is a model that was very popular in the early part of actually in the last decade. It has fallen off because of financing. It may resume. We have 3 of them next door to us. There's no reason to believe that we won't, if we make it attractive, that we won't attract one of those facilities ourselves. Is that residential or is that commercial? I would agree. But the ancillary cottages usually are considered to be residential. So if we don't have some form of allowing some residential in the business zone, we are not gonna get industrial, we're not getting going here, as we had talked about before. We can't expect to get that kind of intensity. So we're gonna have a mixture of uses, and so we really must be able to be flexible enough to still allow, support residential in the district without, as you very poignantly point out, Maureen, without negating the whole purpose of having a business district in the first place by filling it up with residential, which is a legitimate concern. So far, we haven't had that problem, but that doesn't mean we won't in the future. So, you want to do it by floor area? You say percentage, what's the percentage of what?
Well,
I didn't feel comfortable with that percentage, because
I believe the
people, population, you know.
I'm just going by the discussion that the
Right.
board had, and I believe it was John, I'm sorry John is not here right now.
Sorry, and Tom
Right,
was part of
but-
this too, I'm sorry, Thompson.
But I believe that discussion, what was kind of agreed to was by that linear foot of the building, and how you were gonna compute that, I had no idea, but.
I think that was
No, that was
signage, that was
signage.
signage only.
yeah,
That was not.
That had to do with signage.
So we won't go back there again.
I don't see how we could do it by floor area, because if you're going to have this, allow residences on the second floor, you're automatically breaking the 4951 rule, because you're gonna have 50% residents on the second floor. That whole second floor becomes a residential area, it kind of defeats it. I think we need to look at it more from the percentage of lot coverage.
No, how can you do lot coverage? Because you are measuring, lot coverage doesn't carry the second story. Because you're doing by square foot.
Yeah, well,
Well, if you
I
did,
thought,
I suppose.
the reason I thought of lot coverage, Marty, is that you can have your building out there, and then you could have a residential house, and as long as the residential house was smaller than the commercial facility, you'd have it covered. I don't care if you have rental units on the second floor of the business. I was more concerned with the lot and the way that would end up being broken up.
kind of hard to do anything on a 1 acre lot.
I'll be happy if we get a second story.
Well, yeah, there is that.
Well, yeah,
You know, Marty, these are plans to allow for growth and flexibility, to allow things that our ordinance never allowed for business to come in and do. I mean, that's the whole, not the whole thing, but it also gives the residents opportunities in the area as well.
I think floor area is gonna be the easiest way to go.
Floor area or lot, or footprint area?
You've got floor area here.
Floor area ratio.
Because you can, I mean, your first floor can be 3,000 square feet, and the second floor can be 2,800 square feet.
yeah, because you gotta take the stairwell out.
Yeah.
And you
Well,
can-
as Rich did mention, you could have, you know, the model that we have in the DB1 is to have, that you get residential all the way up to the third floor in the DB1, as long as the ground floor is business.
Right.
Yeah, but third floor, then you're gonna need a ladder truck.
But in that particular case, we will be having much more floor area that's residential.
That is
Not
residential.
dominant. And that's why lot coverage might be more appropriate, or trip generation.
But is there not
So
too,
on DB1, we said that multifamily buildings provided that all units are located on any floor except the first floor.
Correct.
Yeah.
And
Yep.
So you
But
can't,
it seems
you're
like
not
there's,
gonna have a single-family dwelling on that ground floor.
In the DB1, but the DB2 is gonna be different because the DB2 is the backland. So you're gonna have roads going in, you're gonna have a totally different development pattern than you do along the road.
so there's two
It's the
issues.
interior development.
There's two issues with it. And I think the board's in total agreement, including Marty, actually. As long as there's, on a multi-story building, business on the first floor, residential or business, second, third, and fourth, if there ever should be. I don't think anybody disagrees with that. The other issue then comes in, what happens, so that can be permitted. Then what comes into play is if you want to build a single family, this will go to Marty's point, a single family residential that is smaller than that first floor print, maybe? I don't know, that would, to me, that would solve both issues.
Yeah, I think it would have to be smaller than that first floor footprint.
So then that's a lot coverage issue.
Yeah.
It's not a floor area, it's a lot coverage. Because.
Only
if you
when
have-
you're
if you
building
have-
a,
and
only
there's
when
the-
you're building a single family, standalone residential building.
So you're gonna break it
Not
down
as
in
part
two
of the-
aspects, one for second floor.
One for any floor. If it's all contained in, if it's contained in a building that there's only business on the first floor, whatever happens, the rest of the building happens. There can be business, can be resident, can be whatever the builder decides. If it's standalone residential, then it has to be smaller than the footprint of whatever building you're putting in. But I would suggest that then you'd want to consider having no greater than as well. You know,
So we'll do it two standards. The residential,
because I think they're two completely separate issues.
they are, because they're dealing with two totally different design standards, design prototypes. One is a very urban one with the business on one floor and residential and succeeding floors. And the other one is, that Marty's concerned about, is the one that
Allowing
is
too many
typical for a bundle,
residential
which is single family, two-story, single family home,
and,
single family, one floor, doesn't matter.
yeah, I think
But on that basis right there, if you have a single-family home, okay, and you live on the second floor, you can't have a business in a residential zone.
But this isn't a residential zone.
No, I'm just using that as a comparison, and a two-story house.
I'm not following you, I'm sorry.
First floor.
First floor is business.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but I'm just saying, you have a
He's talking
two-story
about
house.
residential, he's talking about a residential zone, that you can't have a business on the first floor.
Right.
Are you gonna have home occupation? It's a business.
Well, we're not dealing with residential.
Yeah, I know, we're trying to develop this one area, not all of the other areas, trying to attract business. You guys are business, your business.
Are you allowing multifamily in, on a business lot? If I had a lot on Route 1 and I was gonna build a business, I would have multifamily.
Above the first floor, yes, you could.
Why? I don't think that attracts people. I think what you're looking to do is get somebody to build a business, and he can live in that on the second floor, or he can put a building near the house and live on the first and second floor or whatever, but it shouldn't be multifamily on that business lot.
But that becomes your choice. If you had that second floor, you build a business and you live upstairs above it, and you get tired of living above the hardware store, so you build another house on that piece of property.
No.
Or, yeah, behind it, so you build yourself a house. Now, you could rent that second floor out if you wanted to. You don't have to, it becomes your choice.
So I don't think that's good. I think you should be limited to one family per business.
So then we'd say if you're living on the second floor, you can't build a house on the property.
Yeah.
Well, one of
then,
the,
then you can make that more business, and that's going to be more lucrative for taxes,
Okay.
or more beneficial for taxes.
Yeah, you won't turn around and be bleeding the system with the
Yeah.
school.
The kids and all that. I mean, you're trying to make business, and you don't want to have multifamily in that business, and then they're going to complain about the business next
Noise.
door, or
Yeah,
that
they are,
big
aren't
business
they?
out back. You know, because you're going to have big businesses out back, and the two or whatever it is, right? So you don't want them complaining they're in the one, and you've got 3 families living there. It's going to be noise out back because it's manufacturing.
Well, that's where we had gone originally, it was just a single family, the owner living on the property.
I think that's the
And
best thing.
it
That way
has evolved
he can
from that
afford to
point.
live there till he maybe moves out and rents a house from them, or builds a house someplace in Arundel or some other town. But at least it gets his feet wet with his business, and he can.
Okay, so you're saying that the owner, if there's a residential component of the property, it must be the owner?
No,
I'm trying to understand
No,
what it is.
I didn't
mean,
say
it should-
owner.
It should be owner, at least first, but it doesn't have to be owner. You
manager.
can't manage that, right, but you could have a person living there that is like working, he could be working there and living upstairs.
Okay.
Because
Overseer.
He's gonna be a watchdog, you know.
Similar to what we did with Kate's Butter, where when they built that house, it had to be related to the business somewhere.
Well, it should be, yeah, I think so.
Okay.
Overseer.
Oh, I don't care what you call them.
I don't know if you can control that, you probably
Can't, no, you
just have a
can't.
single, I think you just have a single, I don't think you can control it.
you want that to
Checking
flow,
IDs and
trying to
everything.
bring people in and businesses in, it seems to, that would be hard at the turnaround, I think. And it gets us back to what was the character of our whole district that we wanted. And again, we're to the back of the character district around one. So the idea was to allow as many uses as we could in there to take advantage of, especially the business uses as we could, and that's how we went from 17 to 34 and whatever other number for conditional use. I think that said though, prior discussions by the board, and I believe there was a motion on that said we were going to allow the single family. I didn't see where we were doing multifamily.
Well, common care would be considered multi.
Yeah, but that was
That's
going
a
to be as a
whole
business.
different,
That was going to be as a business,
that's a whole business.
so whole development. So those are facilities.
That's like Highland Commons. Okay, that's a whole business by itself. And if you didn't have somebody living there, then you wouldn't have the business at all.
Well, see that, and I think that was part of the discussion too, to make it a little more attractive for a business, somebody that wanted to come in and build a business, potentially get either their residence with the business and or next to the business is why we were going to allow that. But we didn't want, in your business area, and you were the one that fought that in that discussion, was that we didn't want the residents to be larger than the business. We wanted the business to be, and I'm pretty sure, Marty, it was you that brought that to the forefront, that we wanted the residents subordinate to, and that's the that's the real question here. How do you decide what is that subordinate? Now, the use, a business guy coming in will be back to one floor for business. I'm not sure in the development today or in the thing there's enough to attract 20 businesses all at the same time to do a multi-story build, but if you could offer a business and some housing and some other things, a service or whatever, you have a potential. I mean, it's eventually going to be up to the public, but we want to make sure that we can stand up and say that we're trying to provide as many options as we can. That's what we were attempting to do when we did this, is to give people some incentive to say, hey, this would be a good place to do what I want to do. Not necessarily what we think might be the best thing to do.
Well, I'm also concerned that we don't negate the big idea. We're thinking of continuing the same development pattern that we have out there in a single-family home in a small business, and the intent of this regulation is also not to negate the possibility that somebody wants to do a large planned unit development. Could in fact do it in this area. If you have a restriction that says you cannot have more than one single family home on a lot, you're gonna have a problem with attracting that kind of people.
I think we should cross that bridge when it comes, because turn out, guess what?
Well, people
I mean,
have
when you're only running from Campground Road when you're only running from Campground Road to the river, you don't have that much area in depth and width to turn around to have a big complex like that.
With the new zone, actually, we do have a lot of area. That was the whole idea of doing the two zones, was to increase the area.
But where's the map to show us the area where we were increasing?
We've got that map.
Yeah,
100
100
times.
times.
Okay.
We have two areas that we have to relook at, if I remember, down by Arundel Barn Playhouse,
Yep.
in that
Yeah,
area.
that's already been resolved.
And there was one other area we weren't
Walker's
sure.
Lane.
Yeah, we were looking at the backside of Walker's
Another,
Lane.
yeah.
Has anybody ever approached him?
Yeah. I don't think it's gonna fly. Walker's Lane folks don't seem to be interested in that, but that doesn't mean we can't do it from the rear of Limerick, but, you know,
Okay, let's try
it's
to.
it's an issue of, there's some soil issues there, too.
Okay, so
We don't have soil.
let's breathe.
Oh, I'm fine with that.
Okay, let's breathe.
And we'll do whatever the board wants to do in this situation.
Any comments from the board regarding, one, business and family? Marty, I'll let you start. You feel what? No residences ought to be allowed at all?
As on a single lot, no. I mean, to have a house between other businesses, no. If you're gonna keep it business, keep it business. But if you're gonna have a caretaker, all right, with the business, that's a different story. That's security.
Okay, so what you're proposing is that any of these allow.
I'm not gonna have a cluster housing in a business zone. Simple
We're
and
only
plain.
allowing one or something subordinate to the business, so that's not gonna happen anyway. I'm just trying to clarify before we get the other opinions out here. One, what you're saying is one residential family unit per business on a single lot. I mean, you could call it a caretaker home, but it's a single-family dwelling. That's what you're saying, right? And to you, that would be fine, if there was no more than one.
And depending. Okay, I'll rephrase this question, okay? How do you propose this if your lot is divided into two different zones?
I believe there's stipulations in the regulation for the,
Well, right now, it's not split, property split. So you can have one business on it, okay, and then you can put another business behind it, so you can turn around and put two different singles. That's what I'm asking you, I mean, in theory,
Yeah, it was to increase the depth of businesses along Route 1. Yeah, that's the whole idea. You're gonna have one set of business in front that's actually a greater area than permitted right now, and then behind that, allow businesses at a much greater intensity and density than is permitted right now. In fact, a lot of it's in our R2 zone.
DB2, this is DB2, this is behind DB1.
This is
That's what we're,
behind DB1, right?
huh? This is behind DB1. And what the board has said is that they wanted all of the businesses that were allowed in the DB1 to be allowed in the DB2 and others. And then we spent many meetings trying to determine all of the other things that could be added. So we've got that. So we'll get back to, I mean, the split lot, there are provisions for lots that are split and which one takes precedence over what. Okay, if you got more than 50% in one area, you're in that area, right?
Let's not do that. I mean, I would say in that situation, no, the intent is to say, we need this zone up front, do this thing that meets the comprehensive plan. And then the zone behind it, which we're gonna have to get blessing from the comprehensive plan committee, is creating a more intense business district, basically make up for what we can't get in the BI district, essentially the reason why we're doing this.
Okay,
And
so
also
to answer,
create a very distinct.
okay, and
dense
to answer
business
Marty
area
then,
downtown here.
as long as you met all of the setback, dimensional requirements, design standards on this front portion of a lot that happened to be in DB1, you could put in a business. And if you met the design standard setbacks and all the standard, on the back part of the lot in the other district, you could put a second one on that same lot.
Right.
In that area, under
In fact,
that,
it
and that's
encourages
fine, I mean, that's even more flexible.
Do we have any lots other than Weir's Motors that is gonna be split that way? Didn't we
Yeah.
follow the property line
Yeah.
to split out the DB1?
Not all of them.
No.
Most of them we did.
no,
Most we did.
Okay, that's what I thought we had done.
We didn't do the setbacks based on linear foot. We basically followed property lines where we could.
Yeah, because we're gonna do is down there around the ball.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
We did that, and Marty's one of the lots which is he's actually got more area. He's got area in the DB2 district and the DB1 district.
Cool.
Marty does.
and so does the lot next door to me.
Okay, so that's a win-win.
So you get two. You get two possibilities that you can't do right now.
So to get back to residences on those, if you, and I thought these were your words, Marty, you said you could have a single-family unit or a caretaker unit, which becomes a single-family unit, I mean, by our thing. To you, that would be okay?
Yes.
Okay, so single-family is fine, you don't feel multifamily should be allowed in the business district?
No.
Okay.
Unless you're doing something like,
Planned unit development.
Honeywood Commons.
Okay.
I mean, because that is a different purpose.
Okay.
That's a different,
That's fair.
So I'm gonna have,
No, I'm just asking the board's opinions. Right? I mean, for Marty, business in the business districts, period. With the exception if the owner wanted to put in a single-family unit, they could. If they want to put it upstairs, they could. Whatever, but there's gonna be only the potential for one standalone, single family, right? Per Marty, how do you feel?
I can go either way, but I agree with that aspect, but if we're looking in the big picture down the road, and we've got a major planned unit development, and you're gonna be eliminating stuff. And I think that's what we should be looking at, what's gonna happen down the road.
Well, that's the whole purpose of
If we
plan.
do it with just a single-family dwelling, and we do get an option or an opportunity to present, when it comes to us, it'll take 6 to 8 months to a year to get the zoning changes after that.
Well, I think Marty was very specific in his thing, saying except, and what the board has rejected a couple of times, Marty, is the concept of a planned unit development, and Ted has presented a couple of them. Because I've heard it, and again, it depends on the group that happens to be here in the night, unfortunately, and that's why we keep on going back and forth. You take a vote at one, and then the issues get raised again, and you got a different mix, and people feel a little different. So you would agree with Marty, with the exception that if there were another development, a larger development in the DB2, either mixed use or planned unit development, that's something else. Is that right?
Yeah.
So no more than one, so you're kind of in agreement, no more than one single-family standalone per business on a lot. If, again, you gotta meet all the setback requirements and everything. How do you feel?
I tend to agree with that. I like the idea, you know, if you're gonna have a residence, the initial idea was that it is subordinate to the business.
Always.
And I cannot see more than one family unit being subordinate to the business.
Okay.
At that point, the business becomes subordinate to the residential dwelling. As I would not like this, I wouldn't want a PUD in the DB2 district for exactly that reason.
a what?
The planned unit development. I would not want that in the DB2 for exactly that reason. At that point, the residential aspect becomes subordinate to the business. And I don't think that that's appropriate in a business district, any more than I think putting a business in a residential district is appropriate.
Ted, your comments.
no, you want to hear.
Yeah, no, I do, because we've gone full circle again on you, and again, it gets to the makeup. These, my opinion, these things have been addressed. The idea tonight was to take and come up with something that could be presented and get down something as easy as determining the floor plan. So what is being presented, I think the work has been done not only once, but twice, and maybe even 3 times, because I've had PMUDs in several different packages that I reviewed diligently. So anyway, I would ask you to, I know you don't want to, but,
No, I'm happy to. I'm
but
facetious.
I get it. It's a little hard sitting here as the chair and saying, hey, so I'd like you to share a little bit of that anyway.
Well, I think the reason why I'm looking at preserving some increased residential in conjunction with the increased business is because that's a model that's becoming more prevalent today in development. Have we seen it here in Roanoke? No. We haven't seen it in Roanoke. Have we seen it in Kennebunk? No, not yet. Have we seen it elsewhere in Maine? Absolutely.
Yeah, but guess what?
Let me
This is
Let
around.
me finish.
Let him finish.
Let me finish. One of the things we try to do in planning is we try to plan for the future, and a lot of it is yes. Some of it might be George Jetson. Hopefully we don't get out that far, but it is trying to anticipate what trends will be. That's why we're doing the marketing study and the branding study. We anticipate what might be coming or what we might want to attract in order to capture it, in order to make sure that we're in a position to grab it when it comes. We've been lucky when we have places like Kate's or Benton's or other places like that that have to sit and wait for us to change ordinances in order for them to conduct their business. And that's great that they sit and wait. But I will tell you that most places don't sit and wait. Most business enterprises don't sit and wait because there's plenty of other places to go. We're in a competition with other towns. We're actually between towns that right now have outcompeted us like crazy. We've got Saco and Biddeford, which is a powerhouse to the north, and we've got the Kennebunks to the south. They're tough outfits to compete with, especially when considering they've got all the resources we don't have in terms of infrastructure. And they also have their zoning in place to be able to accommodate many of these things. So what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to anticipate what we might have that's special that they don't have, that we might be able to capitalize. And one of the things that we do have in this particular area is land. If we look at Kennebunk, look at the Route 1 corridor. It's filled up in the northern section. There's not much more area that can go. Biddeford, Saco, they don't have anything like that. You have to go out River Road to find the land to do this kind of thing, or out North Street in Saco. They're very focused urban development, especially around the mills and downtown. You know, will PUDs come back at the way they did in the 90s? Probably not, or at least not right now. But the intent is to try to make it so that we have some flexibility. So if somebody were to come to us, as a property owner did come to me and ask me, can I do something like the village center? I'm able to say, yeah, you can do something like that. You're gonna have to meet certain ratios of business to residential, but yeah, something like that might be feasible. I want to be in a position to be able to say that to a property owner who's thinking in those terms. Now, at the same time, I agree with Marty. One of the things that we don't have right now is protection for our business districts, in that you can build, our entire Route 1 corridor can be completely filled with residential houses right now. Right now. The only place where we did a stopgap measure, if you recall, was in the BI district, where we said, no, you have to have a business associated with that. But in the CCN district, the CCS district right now, the whole Route 1 corridor could be, and Route 1 corridor, Route 111 could be filled with single-family homes, and we're not gonna be able to do anything about it. So, yes, Marty, I agree with you. We have to protect the business, the limited business land we have. But the land farther back, and the land above these businesses offer an opportunity to put in the kind of residential that might support those businesses, quite frankly. Because let's face it, any successful downtown or any successful business area that we have that isn't a strict development has residential very close to it, so people walk or drive or ride their bicycles to the local stores. That's one of the aspects. Is that a business model that you can build a whole business on? Maybe not. For us, probably not. But it's one of the businesses that you would want. You want to be able to have residences that are close to your business, who would be more inclined to frequent your business because they're close to that business, rather than having to go to Biddeford or go to the mall or some other place like that. Now, is this theoretical? Yeah, but I think it's something at the same time that we should not dismiss out of hand. We should always look at the most successful kinds of commercial areas that exist. What makes them successful? One of them is the proximity of residences. So that's why I don't want to limit the potential for a planned unit, not for incrementalism, but a planned project.
You were going to take exception to some what are you saying?
I don't see Arundel, okay, to be classified as a downtown district.
No, you don't. And it's not now.
It will never be,
Well, then it won't be.
Okay.
because I don't see sidewalks, and I've phrased this before, and I may be just being redundant. I don't see sidewalks on Route 1. I mean, you can have your bicycles run up and down the road and everything else, but I don't see sidewalks or anything else along that way.
Let me ask you, Marty.
Because the simple fact is, unless you have everything in storefront, like you have the landing zone in Kennebunk, okay, where sidewalks are prevalent, I don't see it in Arundel on Route 1.
Did you see it, sidewalks in Kennebunk along Route 1 from the downtown to the Arundel border? Did you envision sidewalks being there?
No.
And they're there.
The bicycle lane, well, where are you calling it to? I don't see it from Ross Road down.
No, but you see it all the way up to Ross Road, don't you? The sidewalks.
No, not all the way.
Both
Why are those
road.
both sides of the road?
Both
Why are
sides of
those
the road.
sidewalks there?
There is not all on both sides of the road. Because if you go from the corner of Ross Road down to Keating's, there is not a sidewalk there.
To the bank.
Yes,
So why are the sidewalks there?
because it was somebody's happy idea, okay, along the way.
They're unnecessary, I think. You never see them used.
Well,
I
the
walk
atrium
down there
is,
and send them- I go
And you walk every day, 7 to 10 miles a day.
They're never used. You never see people on the sidewalks. Never.
I would agree from the standpoint they're very inhospitable sidewalks.
Right in Kennebunk Center, they use them, like right by the Kennebunk end.
Where
and
all-
those- that little
Yeah,
cluster
Where
of
there's
things,
multiple things.
They use them there. That's the only place they use them. And I walk there almost every day.
Yeah, because that's the only place you can, because otherwise you try to walk on the road, you're gonna get hit.
Okay.
That's,
We're way off, but sidewalks are a terribly big issue.
That's for another meeting.
However, one of the things that has driven us forward with this is part of the desire by the town, as demonstrated in the town meeting and by vote of the citizens, to move forward with this study, not only for economic growth and impact, and that's something that needs to be done to help alleviate some of the tax burden and to have Arundel look to the future. So part of our process and part of the responsibility as a member of the board isn't to take what we think personally here, but what is in the best interest of the town and do the very best that you can to try to forecast to bring in business the best that you can. I think we said from the offset, or from the beginning of this, that we were going to try, Marty, to do our best to be ahead of this study that they're going to be releasing their findings on, and then we would regroup and reconsider even all of the things that we said to make sure that we were somewhat in concert with tomorrow, not today. And if we want things to stay exactly like they are, then you do nothing. If you
Okay,
want
I'll buy
to,
it.
if you want to have the potential, then we've got to answer some of these questions and be able to present it in a way that is both business friendly and is understandable by the residents that are eventually going to vote this yes or no. And the business people are part of the vote, you know, so everybody.
half of the
has their
business
thing.
people don't even live in town.
Okay.
They probably would if they could have their house on the second floor.
No,
So, task at hand, we had, the board had already gone through DB1. We had pretty well decided on DB1 all of the issues. We have reviewed this list, Marty, and you approved this the last time as well.
Yeah.
For all of the permitted uses, and the conditional, everybody sitting here was part of those discussions. and voted for it, the way that they are. So what the planner is telling this board, and he has told us 10 times, 12 times, over 12 meetings, or whatever number of meetings, and we can go back and count them if you like, is he needs a little bit of guidance from us in order to be able to go from these concepts to being able to put it into an understandable regulation that then, once it's there, then we can really put it down and say, this is what is envisioned. And what is envisioned so far, I think by the board and all of the plans today, is businesses along the face of Route 1 in that business district 1. To expand those businesses and the opportunity in the DB2 business to include many other, including most of what the board voted on as conditional things as well, which was a little bit bigger. But however, we didn't put limitations on the size and the number and those kinds of things. So that is the questions, or those are the types of questions, I'm going to turn it back to you, that I'm going to ask us very bluntly on these, what we feel is the best for each of those areas. I mean, we've done the DB1, we've done an inordinate amount of work on DB2, and I don't agree with everything, you don't agree with everything, but there's been votes at various times that this is what seems to be in the best interest. So Ted, I'm going to bring you back to decision point, and hopefully as a board we can look at the individual points, not the overall concept, and I'm not being flippant, but not the sidewalk issue at this time, but exactly what it is we need to get that framework to have an ordinance. And this started one, this isn't the end of one, but this will give us the design standards for the area. So Ted, I'm going to bring it back to you.
Are we happy with the uses, the list of uses? Any changes that need to be made?
These have all been approved twice.
Yep, there's nothing different except I changed a couple of names. We didn't have golf course in there.
And
We're gonna drive it down Route 1?
That's next.
Okay.
Space and bulk is next. But I want to make sure that the uses are good. Recreational facilities, I put amusements in there, so that
parks and recreation.
that makes it separate from passive recreation. And also is a signal that includes a whole bunch of things besides, traditional recreation. Kennel, what else was it? Low impact manufacturing, you wanted to make that a conditional use, it is in there. Daycare facilities for pets, you want to make that a conditional use, you're concerned that was like a kennel, the noise issue.
No, this good stuff.
Yeah, golf course was the only thing.
Yeah.
Golf course was the only other thing that I added. I assumed that
And-
the level of intensity to a golf course that you guys are gonna wanna have some conditional use standards for.
Go ahead, Marty.
I don't think it's big enough to turn up on a golf course.
That was my thought, Marty.
Yeah, mine.
I mean,
But that's
If you don't include it, then you're eliminating.
yeah.
That being said, there is a par-3 golf course in Sanford that
Yeah,
would fit
right.
in there quite nicely.
Okay,
But my first thought was.
Why, you gonna bounce it off the buildings?
it's okay.
No, Marty, the one in Sanford takes up about 3 acres.
Yeah, wanted to try to be as inclusive as we could, remember? Okay.
I don't get out of town much, I'm sorry.
And when you do, you don't go to Sanford.
Okay. So I think those are fine. You need a vote by the board to say that this from version 3.0 of June 15th.
Make a motion that we approve.
Are there, before we do that, are there any changes
We
to the
haven't gotten to
vote?
that, I'm dealing only with uses here.
Okay,
So we're dealing
so
with.
this is only on the permitted and conditional uses.
I make a motion that we accept the permitted and conditional uses as outlined in the version 3 dated June 15th, 2013.
I have a motion to accept the permitted and conditional uses. Do I have a second?
Yeah, okay.
Okay. I
For
have
the
this
sake of
second.
discussion, yeah, okay.
Okay, any further discussion on the
Yeah.
uses money? Okay.
Is this outdoor sales so you don't have flea markets?
You know, frankly speaking, that was an uncreative thing on my part. I just took that over from the existing zoning ordinance. That's what you have right now.
Right, flea market creates more business and more foot traffic and anything else, where it might be possible for your sidewalks or anything, but otherwise you don't have enough people.
What do you wanna do?
I'm asking the question.
Are you saying eliminate it?
No, I'm saying you have to have a conditional use.
It's there.
You're making it a conditional use,
If it's over 5,000 square feet.
and that isn't much.
That's what you have right now. That's your standard right now.
Okay. I guess I'm sorry. It's a
Put
permitted,
it in
it's a
square feet.
condition, it's a conditional use right now, right?
Yeah.
So we're gonna continue it. I mean, that's what that said.
We're not taking anything away from
We're
anyone.
not putting,
Okay, then I stand corrected then.
we're not gonna, it's not an additional burden. What we're saying is,
You're just.
we've only had the one, to carry it forward in case there's someone else that wants to do it. But good point, Marty. Unless I missed your, unless there's some other.
Oh, I thought it was the other way around. I stand corrected.
Okay, Rich, you indicated you had other discussion?
Yeah, we're back on that residential family. Are we going to say a single-family home, or are we gonna allow multi-family situations?
Oh, number 27?
Yeah, we never, I don't think, we came up with what we thought we wanted, but we never really resolved the issue.
Okay, good point.
Swept it under the carpet.
No, that's why
That's
we're
why
here.
he's catching it. Otherwise, it was swept under the carpet.
No, I don't think it was swept under, I think we just missed it.
No.
We just never
It's
settled
crossed
the
out
issue.
on my copy.
Okay, because we
I
never,
crossed out
settled
multifamily.
the issue. I would take out the two-family and multifamily. It's a residential, single-family, provided the residence is subordinate to an operating business use on the site.
And that takes out the question and the parens.
And the two-family.
Yep, I agree. Okay,
So that would be my amendment to 27,
okay.
since I have to make it in a motion format.
Well, that's part of the discussion. He'll change his motion should so elect to.
Okay, I'll change my motion to reflect.
Any other, let's see if there's any other ones.
Okay.
There's that one that would have to be amended, Ted.
Still don't have an answer on what subordinate means. Turn over your page.
Okay.
What is it? Area? Floor area? I guess it's gonna have to be floor area at this point.
Or,
I thought we had looked at lot.
or,
No, because you're only going one story now, so lot coverage doesn't matter.
No, you could go two-story.
Single family you can't.
Yes, you can.
Doesn't matter.
Oh.
Single family can live on the second story.
You should go with lot area. Floor area. Or lot coverage. Just do it lot coverage.
See, I was going with lot coverage, because I think you could live on the second floor.
Sure.
It's not like we're putting a ranch out there.
okay.
Okay,
Here
I
we
lost
go.
something.
Yeah, I got totally lost.
Lot area.
I thought, for the DD2, in the prior discussion, everybody said two things. One, you could have a resident above a residence.
That's correct.
Right.
Okay, or you could have one single-family unit. So why worry about the size of it? I mean, if somebody's gonna put in their business, I mean.
Well, that was what Todd brought
That's
up
what he's
about.
getting at. What's going to be
What is subordinate?
What's subordinate?
Do we put a
Then you don't have to
4,000?
have-
No, then you don't have to have, it doesn't have to be.
So you would have a single family home there and they gotta have a business of some sort, so what's that mean?
They can have it in a,
It's a home occupation, it's not a business.
No, I think it has to be subordinate to the business. It has to be It has to have something to do with the business. The owner lives there, the caretaker lives there, somebody.
Well, what Ted had said, you just do it by floor area. The floor area of the single family resident has to be less than the floor area of the business.
I thought about Florida before Ted said.
Well, try to keep it simple.
I know,
Acreage.
I know.
Well, the reason why I was trying to do that was because that means the residents, if you have a two-story building, the floor area in the second floor is gonna have to be less than the floor area in the first.
Yeah, that's right.
All right.
But you were saying we should go with lot coverage.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because
I think we should-
by your setbacks, you ain't gonna have a big house on a 1 acre lot with a business.
Well, imagine, considering there aren't that many 1 acre lots in the DB2 district, I would say that probably that's not gonna be a problem. Seriously, that'd be a big problem. Unless you subdivide a whole bunch of 1 acre lots. I mean, that's the other way to do it. They subdivide a whole bunch of 1 acre lots with a single family home and own the business in the bottom.
All right, then what is the average size of your DB2 then?
It varies all over the place. Lots as big as 50 acres. I don't have an average, I haven't averaged them for you, but they're not, most of the 1 acre lots are in the front of the DB1 district.
Okay. And that point gets to not resolving the issue of how to
No.
determine what it is you're trying
Floor
to
area,
determine.
I would propose it says, provide the floor area of the residence is subordinate to the floor area of the operating business.
And but you want the definition of subordinate. And subordinate means less than,
Smaller than.
Yeah, that's what
smaller.
I said.
So rather than subordinate, that single family unit will be smaller than the business. You don't have to use up a whole floor. If you do a single family unit, set aside, then it's just gonna be smaller. And then you don't have to worry about either one. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. Ted, did you, I noticed your writing there.
Yep. You want me to read it back to you, Mr.
I want you to read that, and then I'd like you to consider, Roger, amending your original, because you're the only one that can do it after discussion. And then we can vote unless you have more input, Marty?
Yeah.
Huh?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, number 27, residential, comma, single family, provided the residence, the floor area of the residence is less than the floor area of the operating business use on the site.
So we had a motion to approve, had some discussion on item number 27 as just read was amended. How does the board feel about the as read? We have general consensus on that?
Yeah, it was read, yes.
Okay. So, Roger, I'd ask you to reconsider your motion to
I'd
include
like to
the change.
reconsider the motion to include item number 22, which is residential single family, provided that the residence is less than the operating business use on site.
Excuse-
And as read by the plan, as read by the
Okay, as read by the plan.
Excuse me, Raj. You said 22?
Yeah, you meant
27.
Okay.
Good. Okay. Is there any other discussion on
Yes.
this one?
Okay,
Okay.
one other good question. Since we're all looking in the crystal ball, okay?
Mhm.
How does this happen if your business owner needs to expand his residence upstairs?
Doesn't,
Or does he have to expand the entire floor, but upper and lower?
yes, expand the business.
I mean,
Well, if the
I'm just
residence,
saying, everybody wants to look in the crystal ball
if the
and
res-
plan for the future, so I'm asking that question.
it would, wouldn't it depend on how big the residence was to begin with? If it was only 50% of the business, they'd be able to expand it.
But the floor area of the business has got to be greater than the floor area of the
Yes.
residential use.
Yeah,
That's
so
simple,
it-
that's why you just approved it.
Right, so
So
if
if
he
you
wanted,
expand the business, if you want to expand the residence, you have to expand the floor area of the business.
In other words, he only has one kid now. Now, he gets busy and his business is going now, all of a sudden he needs 3 bedrooms instead of one.
Well, if I
Or
have
two.
if I have a 4,000 square foot, business, as long as my residence is less than that 4,000, if it's 2,000 right now and I have 2 more kids and I add on 2 bedrooms and it adds on another 1,000, I'm still below the level, so I don't have a problem. I just can't go above the 4,000.
Exactly.
I can't
So you
go
don't
above the
necessarily-
3,999.
So you don't necessarily have to expand the business. You have, if you're at the threshold of 49%, then in order to increase the residential, you'd have
You'd
to
have to
increase
expand.
the
The
business.
scenario that was presented was a single-family home.
And we didn't give it a percentage here, we just said less than.
Less than,
Yeah,
that's
that-
right.
50%, 49%.
No,
That's
no,
less.
I could be 75%.
Yeah, or 25, I mean, that's at the maximum level that we can go. I agree. So if you're at 25%, you could increase, or 50%. Okay, so,
Just-
no, you want to make sure everybody's protected, I agree with that, those numbers. And I just want the, because at some point you'll have to, that'll have to be interpreted, perhaps, and we have to make sure that that's fully understood by the board members that aren't here. We'll
But those are the future.
Yeah, no, I know, okay. So have a motion, have a second, and the motion includes changes to 27, as read by the planner. Is there any further discussion about it? Are there any comments by the public? Hearing none, I'd like to take a vote, show of hands for who's in favor.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'll raise my hand tonight. See?
Okay, thank you, Mayor. Okay, so we have a unanimous on that. Next item, Ted.
Okay, so let's move on to, I would have brought up an issue on number 11, but I'm not going to.
Okay.
Why?
And it's raining out, it's getting late.
Drive-throughs are allowed, at least now.
But 11's timber homes.
Huh?
The drive-throughs are allowed now.
That's what I say, at least now they are.
No, they are right now. Drive-throughs are allowed.
In years past, they weren't.
Well, in the current zoning ordinance, they're allowed. We've already had to roll it out. For a gentleman who's built, trying to sell a piece of property. But, moving on, the question was timber harvesting, but we'll drive off that bridge when we get it.
We're relinquish that to the state.
No, you haven't. Relinquished timber harvesting in the shoreline zones.
To
It's
the state.
not, you still have timber harvesting over 40% business.
40%.
But we'll deal with that on performance standards, okay? And if we have to, we'll come back and amend this. All right?
Okay,
Okay.
next item.
Next item is, maximum building size. I know we've gone around the horn several times, but if I'm looking through the ordinances, you guys have never voted on this. Last time I checked it, you see the checklist there. We've gone from 50,000 to 100,000 to no maximum building size. I believe the last discussion was no maximum building size, but we don't have a vote on it. We don't have consensus on that.
I thought that was correct.
Depends on lot size.
Yes, it does, but this is
Yeah,
max size,
exactly.
this is max in any situation, maximum amount of building size for this.
I guess the discussion point, by not having a match, we're actually taking away some of the movement that we were trying at one point to direct to be done. We had the small, medium, and high growth, small, medium, and large facilities, with the larger ones had to be up there. I mean, I don't have a problem without having a limit. I mean, if somebody wants to put in a big facility, put on a rental.
But what do you do with somebody who has a 50-acre lot, and they want to put in a 49-acre building?
Well, no, they still have to.
You can't.
Why not?
Very
Well,
simple.
they'd have to
By
do
your
all
floor
of the
space.
setback requirements and
Right.
all of the.
By your floor space, you need so much.
Impervious area.
Yeah, which is 70%,
Plus your 70,
Yeah.
so.
So you have a 50-acre lot, you can put a 35-acre building up.
Boy, then we wouldn't have anything.
Guess what? You would have a very good tax base.
say that.
It's a warehouse.
Right. It's a big box store.
So,
And the concern.
There is no tax base on a box store.
Okay, wait. There's no what?
There's no tax base on a box store.
Okay.
Why is there a tax on my garage then? It's nothing but a square building.
Tad, you were gonna say something?
No, that's the only question, because as you recall, and hopefully the comp plan committee will agree with us when they look at this,
They won't.
is that the issue is that the concern was, and still is according to the TCG people,
English?
that our consultants, that the concern is the box store. Do you think we're over the box store phobia that we had?
No, because the box store is over with.
That's what he's saying.
That's what I'm asking.
Well, if that's the case, you wouldn't have Market Basket moving into Lowe's.
Yeah, it's,
That would have been split into 4 little stores.
they could have, Market Basket could have come here if they had known we were gonna change that.
They may
No.
still come
Do
here.
you want to
Consider what
eliminate
they
the
say.
possibility of a big box store coming in?
Well, actually, 50,000 is less than most of the box stores anyway, so.
Besides Lowe's.
Yeah, but the last discussion, 50,000 and 60,000 you couldn't, so, however, the last discussion was no limit. Right.
But there wasn't consensus on that.
If
That's
Ashboro
all.
wanted to come in and took up 88,000 square feet, would we enjoy having them here?
That's it, see, that's the
Or
question.
Cabela's
Is that an
come,
appropriate
wanna
place
come
put
to
it?
town, right?
We don't have that in the B1 district. Well, the problem with the B1 district is the B1 district is in fact, of course,
Right.
Yeah.
or what. So the issue is given the issue of the surrounding residential neighborhoods, we provide enough buffering, et cetera. Do you feel that it doesn't matter what size store, what's the maximum size storage facility we should have? And I guess that,
They would still, they
The other
would still
question-
have to comply with all of the performance standards for
The only question-
and traffic and everything else.
Okay.
I mean, that's
Right.
not hard to do.
The only question is that if you have residents around, and if you have that size of store, or box store, or anything else, how are you gonna hide it? Okay? Perfect example, not between the two of you guys or anything else. If you had a box store, how are you gonna hide it so when you look out your window that you can't see it?
Are you in a business, are you talking about people living in a residential area?
Yeah.
Or a business district? Are they in a business district?
No.
But
If I turn your screening,
Well, that is a planning and development function.
My whole point from that would be, we're going to allow low-impact manufacturing. We're going to allow other, a fuel storage facility, things along those lines. They're not gonna require huge amounts of space, or at least I don't envision that they would. We're not putting a shoe factory or something in there. So I don't really see the need to have an unlimited building size. I think we could restrict it. The DB2 is almost a supportive position to the DB1 anyway.
Exactly.
And so we would not want an unlimited size. Granted, you could probably put a 35-acre building up if you want, but why would anyone want to? And
I don't think
why
there's
would
enough
we
land
want to
out
let
there.
them? So honestly, I looked at this originally and said, maybe 150,000 square feet, but the more I think about it, the more I think that a 50,000 square foot building
That's where
is
we
more than
started.
sufficient.
That's where we started.
It's not a big building.
it's a very small building. I'll give you an example. Anthem Blue Cross is 250,000 square feet with its schools.
That's a big building.
no.
But it's really not a big building when you go there.
How big is this school building? Any idea?
It's laid out in a different area.
I don't know. I really am.
Yeah,
That would
'cause
be a good
I'm not sure how big it is either.
We got a scale there.
You guys have any kind, as folks that live here in town, the
Fine.
idea of a big business coming into town, you think that's a good idea, bad idea?
I think it'd be good. What do you say, what do you say about Bucks?
big box store or something doesn't pay taxes.
It, compared to the amount of space that they're taking up, no, they don't. They don't pay significantly enough to compensate for all of the lost space on, that they take up.
No, they don't get that, but then they come back to personal property tax.
Yeah.
So guess what? They get sucked up too there.
Fixtures.
What?
That's assuming that they'd actually pay them,
Yeah.
and not look at the town book and see all the people who haven't bothered to pay their taxes, and we don't chase them out.
Okay, we're getting off a little bit, I'm sorry, I'm gonna cut this one up before we go any further there. So the discuss,
Too late.
I'd rather have an office building than a box store.
so the
I'd rather a
discuss,
medical building, a smaller medical building.
Well, what is, it's still a box store.
We get any idea?
It's, no, because I didn't bring a scale with me.
How big is your building?
Oh, wait a second, here we go.
Building
No,
out back,
I've got it.
just wooden building,
Yeah, the bar area.
everything?
Okay, so,
Yeah.
yeah, they're really looking at about 50,000.
Wait a minute, that was the tent area, and how big was the tent area?
It's 52,000.
It was,
3.75.
yeah, let's say 30.
A school's
well,
57.
my garage is 80 by 80.
Sorry?
Okay, and that's 6,400.
Right.
Okay, guys, I'm sorry.
School's 57,000 square feet,
Okay.
57 points.
This isn't a huge building.
No, you're right, I have no concept of the amount of space, which is why I was asking.
Yes, my view wasn't even in space, it was what would be beneficial for the, would it be beneficial if somebody like that wanted to come in? And I'll say some of the bigger ones, that the Cabela's, LL Bean,
And they're looking at what, 100,000 square feet?
Well, Cabela's is 88,000 square feet.
Okay. So 100,000 square feet,
Typical Hannaford's usually 35, 40.
okay.
so those kinds of things.
Walmart is 62.
Yeah, when you get in there, I mean, those are the kinds of things that would be allowed.
And that's the
Again,
only
and
thing I
it-
want to impress is that,
And it's secondary into the back, but
right,
they're fairly big. Some of those areas do, but back behind them is residential areas that we were trying to protect with some of the buffering and screening ordinances, and as a, maybe you have up to 50,000 and over 50,000, or up to 100,000, over 100 goes conditional use, and then the board has latitude on requiring additional stuff. I don't know. I'm just putting on, so you can either do a fixed number, you can do a fixed size, no limit, or above a limit as conditional, and then you get really hard scrutiny to make sure that you don't miss a lick at all.
yeah, there are several theories on how to deal with that issue, one of which is, the higher the building, the greater the setback, more intense the use, the greater the setback. And that's how it does. That's one of the easier ways to deal with it. Or, what the potential impact might be in terms of noise or fumes or whatever, greater the setback.
Yeah, those things we've got, yeah.
And those are not easy issues. Those are not tough. Those are tough issues because in many cases, it's a case-by-case basis. So making a complete standard is very, very difficult to do. You start with something with a certain level standard and then go from there. But quite frankly, when we're talking about large structures like that, we're talking about something that is going to be fundamentally different than what that downtown district, as Marty says, is currently. We call it downtown district, but that district is currently perceived at by the town, and the function that it serves as will involve a tremendous amount of traffic on the road. Unless it's a warehouse, those kind of facilities will.
Well, if we're
generate
successful,
traffic.
we're gonna have a lot of traffic on the road.
Exactly.
I mean, that's the whole idea. Good, we'll get good roads and streetlights for you.
I know.
So,
Sidewalk.
so maybe we should,
Three-phase.
yeah, so maybe we should consider maximum building size by, go 100,000 square feet and be permitted, and beyond that, it's conditional.
Well, one thing about conditional, you know, I wanna say this again, conditional means you just put certain standards for that particular use.
Right.
They have to meet certain standards that are a little different than other standards. Doesn't mean that you get to the arbitrary decision, we don't like it or we do like it.
No, no, no.
It's, and we're gonna have to set those conditions, we have to come up with conditions for that particular use.
Well, under a conditional use, though, the board does have a little bit of leeway if it comes to health, welfare, and/or safety of the residents to put what this board feels is appropriate on a conditional use for that given project. You do have to, I agree with you that you have to have your standard, there should be a separate set of standards for those. But also, along with the conditional use, and I think it's right in the preamble of it, that the board does have some latitude. in
Well,
determining.
yeah, it says that, but then when you look at your standards, your criteria for approval, which is what you base your criteria on, that's the only criteria you can make a decision based on. You can't just say, well, we think it'll be good for the town, we don't think it'll be good for the town. It's gotta be based on that, those 7 criteria, or else you have not, you have not approved a project or
And any condition imposed by the board. That's why we read each of the conditions after we go through those 7. If there are any conditions, that becomes part of that record.
Sure, but what I'm saying is you have to have an identified nuisance that's created. that has to be-
Obviously, you can't do
Can't
it.
just,
I
I
agree.
say, I don't like
I agree
his
with that.
business, and therefore, since this is conditional use, I
So-
get to deny.
I guess in a long-about way, what you're saying is you would rather not see 2. You would like to see
No, I
one.
don't, I think 2's fine, it's just that, remember, we have to come up with conditions for it. We have to, the
Huh?
conditional use section has, all conditional uses are gonna have to have a set of conditions
Yeah.
that they have to meet, okay? For the individual use, like we do right now with mining, like we do with.
Well, mining ain't been approved yet, but
But what I'm saying
I
is
know
we
what
have
you're saying.
separate conditions that are for
I-
each specific use that must be met. Auto graveyards, and so anything, any conditional use that are certain, usually we try to set certain standards that are different than normal standards for another use similar to that.
otherwise it should be permitted.
And it should be-
Yeah, it should be permitted.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, see, I would.
Just like your auto repair should be.
I think I would look at it and say, okay, it's 100,000 square feet, that's permitted. If it's more than 100,000 square feet, we're gonna put specific lot sizes that you have to have before
Those will
you
be,
do
those
that.
will be the conditions. that you
Right,
talked
we
about.
would make it conditional, and we would define what those conditions are.
Can it be with planning board approval for over that size? Like, if you put a size of 100,000 feet, and then somebody came and wanted a 200,000 foot building with planning board approval, can't you do it with planning board approval?
Well, they're
Well,
gonna
that's
have
the
to do
condition.
planning board
That's the
approval to
condition.
begin with.
But they can't
Can't be done
override
by
and have a
staff
planning board and
approval.
say it's 100,000 foot without.
Yeah, but at that level, it's got to come before the board anyway. I'm trying to follow that. That would kind of lead the board to be able.
But then you get the public
Do anything.
opinion and all that, they're gonna come to, if it's something people don't want, they're gonna come to the planning board meeting and say, that's BS, we don't want that. Or they're gonna say, yes, this is a good tax thing for the town, it's not a noisy business, let's do it.
Okay, what Bally's talking about there is a special exception. That's what you're really speaking
Okay,
of.
yeah.
That's a different animal. That is discretion. It's not.
It doesn't have to be a
it's
town
special
meeting, it'll just be a
exception.
planning board. If it's something people don't want, they're gonna come to the planning board, they're gonna call you up and call them out. You know, everybody.
Don't do us any good anyway.
Special exception is a different animal altogether. And what that is that's the opposite. That's a presumption of guilty until proven innocent. That's what that is. That means that we will make, if you meet standards that are in some ways are unspecified, if you meet and they're very broad standards, we will let you put in a use we wouldn't normally let you put in, but you really have to show us that this is really for the benefit of the town. If you want to do that, sure, but just to remind you, you have resisted special exceptions on several.
Yeah, I know.
Is that another CMP? Special conditions?
Special exceptions?
Yeah, just like how we had to play with CMP?
No, CMP played with us.
Well, you know what I'm referring to.
Okay, let's not get too far off track and see.
No, a special exception would be something like, a special exception would be like Kate's butter without having to change the zoning ordinance. That would be a special exception. In many towns, a gravel pit in a residential area is a special exception.
I don't want to go there.
Okay, can I make a motion on this?
I personally like special exceptions because it gives you a little more flexibility without having to go into contract zones. But if you, sure, go ahead, sorry.
Okay, I'd like to make a motion that for maximum building size, we go 100,000 square feet. Anything beyond 100,000 square feet is conditional. And that we set up the conditions as part of the ordinance.
So you're saying it's a special exemption?
No, conditional. All those conditions will be laid out. Somebody comes to us and says, I got a 125,000 square foot building I want to put up, what do I have to do?
Okay.
We'll have a list of requirements that go beyond the 100,000 square foot building. So there's no ambiguity, we're not the one that's gonna be making the rules, we're just saying that these are the rules that have been put in place, and that's what they've got to follow.
And what kind of rules, sir?
There could be,
For discussion's sake, I'll second it so that we can actually talk.
Yeah, okay, so I have a motion, I have a second, and the discussion part of it goes.
I just
like any
asked
conditions,
that.
it could be height of the building, it could be setbacks, it could be buffer zones, it could be restrictions on noise, it could be a whole bunch of conditions, but as long as we spell them out prior to that applicant coming to us. So it's not something we're pulling out of thin air to bring this business in.
Okay, but what are the conditions for 100,000? That's what I'm trying to go at. If you have,
It's permitted use.
huh?
It's permitted use, it's gotta follow all the zoning ordinances. It's permitted.
All of the standard and design that's already in there. What is
That's
the
what I'm trying to say is,
30?
for another 25,000 square feet, I mean, you're gonna be finding, you know, I agree with you, but I'm just trying to say what special conditions, where we're gonna be pulling out the rules.
We're gonna have to sit down and define those.
We
We don't have them yet.
We don't have them yet.
Now, you see where I'm going at the question?
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, no, it's very legitimate. What is the benefit and what is the deleterious effect of setting it up as a conditional versus having it go as a special exemption?
Especially zip line goes in front of the town, right?
No, we could
It
grant
goes
that.
before the planning board. It's just like with Bentley. You've had it.
That's why I want to understand this a little bit better.
It's a little better. What it does is, it's not a permitted use. You're not permitted to do this in this zone. But if you show us that you can meet certain standards in which there's no impact, or it has minimal impact on the town, or has minimal impact upon the zone, or you do mitigating things to ensure that it doesn't have an impact, then we'll let you do it, is what it basically says. But as a matter of right, you can't waltz in here with an application for $500,000 square foot warehouse for J.C. Penney, for instance, and expect to just go through site plan, the usual site plan, meeting the simple site plan standards. You're going to have to show us that there are impacts, that this isn't going to create an impact to our town in terms of a whole bunch of different issues, property tax, or not property tax, property values, which is extremely difficult to prove, traffic generation, probably the biggest issues we're running into would be traffic generation. Something like a 500,000 square foot warehouse, it's going to be truck traffic generation, 18-wheelers moving stuff in and out.
I hope so.
It would be something like that, but it wouldn't be probably vehicle. And that's a situation where you would in fact have to be looking at whether or not this is too much of an impact. Is this too much of an impact?
Okay, you have to understand I'm a little slow.
No, we haven't dealt with, we don't have special exceptions, so it's not something you'd be used to, and not all towns have.
But I'm trying to understand, because when I hear the word, what I hear are conditions.
They are.
And I'm trying to get in my mind the difference between putting it over in a conditional use with all of the things down, or saying this is a special exemption, and now you need these conditions. I'm sorry, I'm just not understanding the difference.
Correct me if I'm wrong. Conditional uses, we're gonna say what the conditions are ahead of time. On a special exemption, we're not. You're gonna come in here and you're gonna say, I need a special exemption because I wanna put in a 150,000 square foot building, and we're gonna look at it and say, these are the conditions that we want you to meet. They're not laid out in the ordinance. Conditional uses are laid out in the ordinance. Am I right?
Yep,
Okay.
in a way. There's,
In a way.
well,
You should be a politician.
it's a fine line. What it is it's a presumption of, it really, when I'm not kidding when I say it's a presumption of guilt. Conditional use, you have a right to expect to get a permit if you meet all those
You
conditions.
need all of it.
You have a right, you have a right to expect to get a permit. There's nothing arbitrary, capricious. You get a permit if you meet all those conditions. A special exception, you don't have any right to get a permit to do this, unless you convince us this is fantastic and that we want to. And even if we decide that even if you can prove to us that it mostly is great for our town, if we just don't like it, we don't accept it. So it's a presumption of not allowing it. Conditional use, you presume that you allow it. Special exception, you don't allow it, unless you give it something special.
But I think it's too much on the planning board to make that decision when that applicant is in front of you on a special exemption. Because now we're gonna go back and forth, it's gonna be negotiating, they're gonna get their lawyers, and whereas a conditional is cut and dry, so this is what you're gonna do.
Well, that's why, quite frankly, the special exceptions I've gone through, I've had to go before the ZBA first before I went to the planning board.
Okay.
But then I would.
Because the ZBA gave the initial special
Right.
exception, and then it went to the planning board.
If we were gonna entertain the idea of a special exemption, and I'm not saying that we are.
I
but
don't
if-
care, I'm trying to understand what.
I actually don't think that that would be a bad idea, but I think I would change Roger's motion to say, okay, 50,000 square feet is permitted, 100,000 square feet is conditional, above that is a special exemption.
You don't want to permit 100,000 square feet?
Well, no. Well, it's a
Permitted.
conditional, it's a conditional use. So you basically, we're permitting it, you say you have to meet these particular items.
It's 3 times the amount of work we go to do.
Yeah, it is.
We can't get through these
No.
3 questions.
Oh, I realize
I'm
that.
sorry. Listen, you know, I follow your logic, I follow that reasoning, and I understand it, and I let everybody else make up their own, their own mind. So, right now, we have a motion, that up to 100,000 is permitted. Over 100,000 would be conditional use, and we'll have to write out the conditional use standards, right?
Yes.
There's been discussion about maybe changing that, but I'd like to move forward on the motion as presented, unless there's further discussion on it.
I'm thinking.
Okay, so hearing no discussion, I'm gonna bring,
As long as it leaves open to
Right.
come back to the conditional use after.
Oh, yeah, we gotta do
it
it.
would
Not
only,
tonight.
No, not tonight.
it would only, you're talking about the special exemption?
Yeah.
If it's approved, if there's consensus on the board that it's approved, then that's approved, we wouldn't move it over to the special exemption. If we can't get enough, if there isn't enough votes to do it,
Okay.
then we have to have the discussion or a motion or question by the board to move it the other
Well,
direction.
yeah, because I was just thinking that, and I'm fine with if we say it's 100,000. It just, if it's conditional use afterward, I'd rather see us look at a special exemption, because it gets too big.
The way I
I'm just
read,
trying to
the
get
way
through
I
it.
read this, 100,000 is permitted. Anything over 100,000 is conditional use with special exception. Can you do that?
Is that the motion?
No.
No.
No, this is part of this.
I'm just asking a question.
Yeah, you could do it, you could,
Over 100,000, conditional use with extra, whatever you
no,
call
no,
it.
no, no,
No, we
you
can't.
wouldn't do that. You want a special exception for something that's bigger than
100,000.
100,000.
Okay,
You
we're
want
going,
something very.
I'm just,
okay,
You know, you
vote
have your
no.
condition
If that,
for that
if you want
situation.
special exemption, vote no. We have a motion and a second,
And how's it read?
okay? And we've got this, what I'm trying to do is separate the two, just so that we can try to move it through. Right now, discussion wise and the motion wise is up to 100,000 is permitted, above 100,000 needs to go to conditional use. If 3 people on this board say, yes, that's good, then that's what it is. If 2 or less say that's good, then we'll entertain another motion that may be similar to what you just said or what Rich said. And it looks like there's 2, but I want to put this to bed. That's all I'm trying to do.
Yeah, and another thought.
Yep, that's still
Another
discussion.
thought would be to table this issue till the next planning board meeting when we have 3 other planning board members to cloud the issue.
Thanks for the thought.
Then we'll be all another cluster.
I'll be in Phoenix.
Okay. Our goal tonight was to give the
100,000.
give the planners some concrete information that he can move forward with revenues.
Yep.
Okay, so we have a motion to up to 100,000 permitted over would require conditional use permit. Got a second by Rich for the purpose of discussion. No other discussion. I just like to take the vote. All in favor of that motion? We have 1, 2, and okay.
Some in favor.
2 in favor, opposed, 2 opposed. That's what I thought was gonna happen.
Okay.
Okay.
Motion fails.
Okay, so motion fails at this point. So, right now, we'll be split on the other side as well, probably.
Probably.
Okay, and if we are, then we need to wait for a larger board, but we have to do the best we can at trying. So, would you have a motion today?
I have a motion that we set the maximum building size at 100,000 square feet as a permitted use. Anything over 100,000 square feet is a special exception.
Okay, so I have a motion. Do I have a second from either of you guys? Purpose of discussion or not? Have none. The chair will second this for purpose of discussion and to get a vote. Is there any other discussion? No. All in favor of that proposal? Okay. 2, 4, 2 against. Okay. So, we don't have conclusion. We will refer this to the next board with another group. I would ask that the town planner do 2 things. Write out what the conditional use, going to conditional use, means a potential for what those conditions would be at that level. And also under the special exemption, to have that for the board to say this is what that would look like. And maybe we'll have a
For a building over a certain size.
over 100,000. I think the board pretty well in agreement over 100,000.
Yeah.
Yeah, everybody was fine up to about that point, but it's more than
Well,
more.
150.
But we need to put that issue to bed and try to move on. Just,
You want the special exception defined. And
yeah, just so that it's better understood too. I'm still not sure, I totally understand it, but I'd like more
What
information.
I'll do is I'll also give
If you
you.
didn't understand it, why'd you vote for it?
Because I wanted to carry this through, because I would
Yeah.
like to carry it through. I mean, it was obvious from discussion, and we have folks that know these things, kind of brought it before the board. I'd like to consider it, but I'd like to, our role is to consider the information provided to us. I need more information.
I'm just
That's why. Okay. No, I don't mind answering, but I do anything. Sir?
Mr. Chairman, I think this is a good idea to, I know this is incredibly, it sounds like nitpicking, but I think it's really important that we do this because I think this is something the comp plan board is going to want to discuss with us. And we want to show due diligence in what we're looking at here. We've considered this thoroughly and explain to them why we came to these conclusions and what justifies, where we're going with this. And that's what we want to do. So
I agree.
I think exploring this more and justifying whatever decision we come to, which might be a special exception, it might be no special exception, we just said it.
Might be,
100,000,
might be just increase
150,000
the
or some
100,000.
compromise. Or maybe at the next meeting, it'll be just unlimited. So, but at least we'll have a little bit more thought gone on this, so we can justify it if anybody challenges us on the comp plan.
Next item.
Next item, okay, building design standards. You know, we had them originally for this district. And my question to you, since we're talking 100,000 square foot buildings and so forth, and some of the uses, is, do we want to have a rudimentary building design standard for buildings in this particular district? Or are we just going to go in opposite direction from what the DB1 does? The DB1 has very distinct building specifications. The DB2 does, should we have them or should we just?
Very straightforward. I understand that.
Right.
Okay.
I think we should have design standards that are less restrictive than the ones in the DB1. The DB1 is more of the upfront image of what we're trying to project. So we need to have some good standards for there. The DB2, which is the back side of that area, I don't think the standards have to be quite as, I can't think of the word that I want to use, as quite restrictive, for lack of a better term. But we do want to have designs. We don't want just a plain metal Quonset hut building.
Okay.
Is that a motion?
No, we're just discussing the point that he would like answered. So we'll start with,
Well, if we have a motion and we second it, we can discuss it, right?
well,
No,
Yeah,
usually what we do is
Why does that not have it one-sided?
get everybody's input. Then somebody, based on everybody's input, should make a motion. Then we can open it up for the discussion to pick it, rework it, and then move.
Okay, no, I agree with Rich.
Okay.
Less restrictive, but some standards.
Marty?
I don't think we should have any standards, because the simple fact is, when you turn around, you're speaking this size of complex, okay? And a perfect example of something a lot smaller, okay, when the Arundel Machine Shop came in, look how they did their building. They wanted presentable and everything else to them, and there's something of this size, or this character, they're gonna turn around and make it presentable enough. So I don't think you should have to turn out it, because we don't put standards and designs on Harvey homeowner in his house.
Harvey homeowners not in the DB1.
I don't care.
Okay, point taken.
I agree with Matt. I think you need to let the people build. You need to entice the people to come into town and build. It's out back, let them build. It's gotta be a code, it's gotta be safe, it's gotta be all that stuff, so let them build it.
Okay.
Don't put restrictions on windows and door sizes and pitch a roof and all that stuff. Just let them build it. It's cut snow load and all that.
Good. So,
I'd go along with that also.
so you're more to the design standard. So you're at the bottom end of less restrictive, and you're up to something similar, probably. Is there a, I want to say a common ground in the middle? And for my opinion, I'm just making my comments like you guys. In the DB1 up front, we do have this character area with very strict design standards. And hopefully we wrote that to say that you will, or you shall.
Should is
do
not a
this.
word that we use anymore.
Yeah, not that you should, okay, you shall. This will be done, not that. How about if we just encourage, if the wording is such that we encourage similar design to the back? It allows for those that can to keep it up to the standard, and as is pointed out in the back, it's, may not require it, but I think, the board being able to say, hey, this is kind of what we would really like, if it's possible to maintain it, fine, and if you can't, they don't have to follow that standard.
Kind of blend in with what you have in the front.
Yeah.
Yeah, you don't want to have
Well,
beautiful.
that's what I mean by less restrictive.
Okay, all right.
I don't want 100,000 square foot metal building
Yeah.
that has no trim or anything,
No,
it's
okay.
flat roof.
All buildings have trim.
Quonset hut.
No.
They can take out the.
Yeah, and that's a good point. Now, Quonset hut,
But-
food district?
They have trim too.
Well, how about if they paint like they do Christmas tree, all kinds of decorated in front of their building? Is that acceptable?
Well, yeah, it's a design standard, and it makes.
Well, no, you
it-
can't,
that's-
it's a sign.
And that's what I'm saying, you know, it needs to be less restrictive than what we have up in the front of, up on Route 1.
Yeah.
You know, I don't want you to have to conform to all the road standards. You're in the back and it's bigger and it doesn't
Doesn't
have
it
to
pretty
be
much
quite
hidden
that
by
much.
the front buildings, though? You're trying to build all the front buildings, you're just gonna have a roadway going back to them, so it's pretty much hidden. It's not gonna be that, how far back is the big
1,000
building
feet.
separation from the road?
And then there's not much separation between, or potentially, who knows where somebody's gonna elect to put it. I guess my thought, is that if you're going to come into an area and build a business and do to this level, and I'm talking DB1, and have that standard, that's the expectation of the kinds of businesses that are gonna come in, so it's attractive to you or to the next business. And I'll just use the term, not that I think that there's anything wrong with them, then right next to you in the back, you don't want that junkyard. Okay, you do want to have, you do want to be able to have something not as restrictive, but you do want to have a mechanism to get it as nice as the front, I would think.
What are you saying, like the building, Richard, that is down like in Bedford, where it's a sheetrock supply across from the dry dock restaurants?
Oh, yeah,
sheetrock.
that's separate.
Is that something you say you wouldn't want?
I'm trying to think of,
It's
I think it's a picture where it is.
sheetrock supply.
On the same side of the street? or-
No,
Would
it's
be-
on the other side, it's
would be
right across
drywall.
from Industrial Highway.
So that's from
I can't
building
picture it.
supply.
Across the street from
Yeah,
Building
it's
Supply.
do be drywall.
Yeah, do we?
Honestly, I can't picture it.
But
Why?
so that's what-
Moody's, how about Moody's? Moody's might be an example, I think everybody knows Moody's, don't you?
Yeah, I know where Moody's
Yeah,
is.
so that's something you're trying to restrict, I mean, because that's a perfectly good looking building.
Yeah, it is, but it has some design on it, it's not just a square
Okay,
box.
but the one right across the street, that Doobies,
I don't know that one.
I'd have to drive down, because honestly, I can't picture it.
then it could
You
be
know
that
where,
bad.
you know where the office supply place is?
Yeah, Fisher James.
Okay, right next door to it. Is that close enough to picture it now?
No,
Easy.
because what I see right next to it is Ben's flooring.
No,
That's behind the Ben's flooring,
But-
right behind.
Oh,
no,
see,
Ben's flooring's up beyond that.
And I
The
think
one
that's
into
the
the
problem.
street
I
to
have
the
no
other
idea
end of
where
the
this
street.
place is located.
I think it's just about next to the motel, isn't it,
Yeah.
just south of the motel?
Yeah.
Next to Ben's Flooring.
Okay.
That's but behind it, kind of.
Mr. Plenum.
Mr. Chairman, this is gonna be a tough one, and I think what we need to do is, I think at the next meeting, in 2 weeks, the board should have, those who believe that we should have something that's, a certain acceptable standard should bring in photographs. We all have phones with photographic capability. I don't care if you do a tear sheet of it, go down and take a picture of what you consider to be something that would be an acceptable design. Because for me to come up with a design.
Yeah, no, I
Wait a minute.
It has to be based on a model.
Hey, instead of a picture, why don't you turn around and actually listen to something, what some of the business people think? I mean, this is supposed to be a business zone.
That's certainly, we can certainly have another workshop on that.
And I don't disagree with you, Marty, and I sure don't disagree with the comments that came in. We're attempting to get there. You have to go through a process. I know you don't like processes, but you do have to.
I go through processes all the time.
Well, good. The idea of photos, we've tried to get people to do that before without much luck.
True, but if you're going to propose, if you're gonna propose there be a standard, then you better come up with some model for me to be able to draw a standard from.
Oh, I agree. So
And
something
there
like,
needs to be a consensus, obviously, we need to build a consensus among the business community as well as what is acceptable and what is not. And there's no other way to do that than visually,
or
have nothing.
or not to have one except for the standards that are in place to make sure that the buildings are safe. I don't see, because I kind of agree with Morty, even though sometimes he doesn't think I do, that you're not gonna go to the expense of putting in a whole new business in a new area, I don't think, without having it look somewhat appealing to come in. And especially if you're in an area where everybody else is looking real good, I think people would tend to shy away from something that really looked horrible. So I think we wanted to have that character image up front. I think we went through, and only thanks to Ted's perseverance and photos and pictures and workshops and that, I think we have built that kind of consensus. I think, again, we're talking to the back. We're talking businesses to the back. We just said that we may want to have the boxers do nothing, not boxers, but these larger buildings, there's nothing that looks worse to me than those kind of things in general. But, so I would agree that we may not want to have standards. So I would guess if there is some sort of different standard that you would like to see, I think the onus should be on those board members that really want something to bring it in. And we'll table this for 2 weeks to really consider this item, because this is very important. This is a big one and how it flows. So I guess, Rich, I'm gonna put a little bit on you, but you
I won't be here, but he'll have a bunch of photographs sent to his,
okay, good.
his cell phone.
Perfect.
You
That's
give him
great.
his cell phone, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So
All
I'll
right.
sure to give you the number.
All right, so this will be tabled along with the other one. We'll have discussion next week, and we'll have other members, and we'll show your pictures.
And I'll give you both, I'll give you.
Did you have anything else
What
you
ones are
wanted
that?
to say about design standards?
You know, either way, I mean, when you get into design standards, you're talking about, yes, sometimes
Expense.
visual preferences.
Mhm.
And what
Expense.
we want to do is find out, you know,
Expense.
if there's visual preferences that are common to all the groups.
Did we do sign standards?
As a point, sign standards, yeah, we did.
We did.
That's what I'm saying, we did sign standards.
Yeah, what, in the character district, on the roadway, that doesn't apply to every time in town, everywhere that goes up, in the
I'm sure
character.
you do have sign standards for every town.
We have them, but the sign standards that we looked at was for the DB one.
Yeah, but I'm saying we did have standards.
Oh, yeah.
It's not hard to establish a standard. Not that I agree that we would, but I'm just saying it's not that difficult to establish some sort of
I-
standard.
Yeah, we can always
That
establish
just
a
takes-
standard. We
But
may
this
not all like
takes
it.
work. You just have to decide on where it is you want to go.
Yep.
And I guess my question again, and even to you guys, and to the public is that, I mean, there's all sorts of businesses that look perfectly well, and they're all different sizes and shapes and configured. Would it be better to have what wouldn't be acceptable? I'm asking a question.
It's a legitimate question because, you know, it's much easier to decide what you don't like.
Well,
Then
that's,
what
I
you
was
do
telling
like.
Ted, I'll send you pictures on both sides of the line, and I'll identify, yeah, I like this, I don't like this. I agree with you. Whatever business goes back there is they're going to have some kind of a facade that looks halfway decent, because they'd be foolish not to. but that doesn't mean that we don't want to have standards. We set standards on the DB1. Any business that goes in there is going to have some kind of a facade up. We just decided we wanted it to look a particular way, and I think this needs to complement it.
Existing standards for businesses coming into town right now? We just lay out the windows and door space, right? I mean, and low level, like you're saying?
What do you do, or what?
No, what is current?
What is current? The current is, you don't have any real standards per se, but what you do is during the conditional use process, you create standards.
Well-
But you've done that. And the example of that would be VIP.
Okay.
I think that's the biggest example that you guys have had. It's also an example, Kate's Butter, but that was mandated by ordinance.
But
VIP you did by negotiation. I did KKW by negotiation.
But turn on VIP, that was also a lot of input. It wasn't primarily from the board. That was also by public input. Okay, it wasn't by the board just setting the standards. It was turned around by the public input.
But it was the board that set the standards, because the
Yeah,
public
we set the
has no
standard,
standards.
they
to
came
set.
here with all the pictures and, yep.
But the public got involved in that.
Absolutely, and the public should be involved in this, too.
That's why I'm saying, if you have the planning board approval, the public should be involved, because they're gonna be hopping on you guys to do what they want.
That's right. I
So
mean,
the only
but-
problem with that, Ellie, is the planning board's gotta have some authority to be able to.
To be able to say
respond
yes or
public.
no.
Yeah.
See,
You
that-
gotta
Yes,
have
that's
that.
acceptable or
And
not.
that's where your special exception gives them powers that they wouldn't have normally.
I just think, like, I know Richard wants to have a certain style building in the back, but I think you need to make it much less restrictive,
Oh,
because the
so I
people
agree,
can't
yeah.
afford it. And
That-
you're trying to
That's why-
entice people to build, and they can't afford it, what the heck, you know,
But that's what I said, it has to be less restrictive than what's up front.
it has to be less restrictive in all ways. I mean, no, you don't come in and put a used building up that's got some blue, some brown, some tan, some gray, and all that crap, you make it be presentable, but that's presentable within reason.
And what you just did was important, because that's the process of elimination, that's saying what we don't want.
Exactly.
We can identify what we don't want, and it's a lot easier to
You're
go
taking-
that direction than it is to sometimes say what we do want. It's much easier to go the opposite direction, saying,
Encourage-
this is unacceptable, we won't accept this is crap, we're not gonna take
This
this,
is-
we're not gonna
We
disrespect.
would love it to be similar to DB1. However, it can't be to this level.
Can't be this level.
And anything
That's
in
what I
between,
think.
and anything in between
And
is.
then as the businesses build up, they're gonna make them better
Better.
on their
That's
own.
right.
They're
That's-
gonna make them better,
that's-
they have to entice the people to buy off them, whether it's a wholesaler, retailer, or whoever, and to make them happy, to buy off them, they gotta make them happy. And
I
that's-
agree with you.
You know, that's gonna happen as they make money, but you gotta be
Can't
less
put it in all at
restrictive,
once.
get them here first, to let them build their bookstore, or build their mahogany shop, or whatever they're gonna have. And then they're gonna start getting it better as they get business. And if they don't get business, they're gonna sell it to somebody else, and they're gonna do the same thing that the first person tried to do.
Agreed. So the task for everybody is gonna be to find what you don't like, what's not acceptable, and then we can go from there at the next meeting. I can work from that. We gotta get out of here in 10 minutes.
Okay, I'm just gonna say that.
Make
Can
my,
I give a Planners report, can we do that, Robert?
Can I ask one thing? On Chad, on that DB1, or at the front thing, you have a road behind all those buildings, including mine, if we do any changes in our building.
No. I don't have a road.
Did you check that out now?
No, what we said is,
The way
if
it
it's
is right now,
feasible.
the way it is right now, if I wanted to do some changes in my structure,
Yeah.
I could not do it because the planning board couldn't permit me to, because I don't have that road between the wetlands and me.
There's no requirement for.
I don't know where that came from, Bentley. I really don't, but that's not true.
I read it.
Well, no, what it says is where possible, we will link parking lots. Interconnections. Those are parking lots
And travel ways.
and travel ways, where there's travel ways. But what we're envisioning is travel ways that are built as part of getting into the back land.
Okay,
So that we
it
don't have-
It can be a perpendicular thing to the road or to Route 1,
Or it
or
could be, or they could, yeah.
Is that-
The first
is
one
that-
that's gonna go in, it's gonna be.
is that the person's
into-
choice? Is that the person's
It's
choice?
gonna be something that's negotiated between the planning board and that person, yeah. But there's no road that we
Okay.
specify.
And I was just reading this conditional thing on campgrounds, you have a 200-foot setback.
Yeah, it's just a start.
Is that how it's always been, or has that changed?
No, that's one thing we have to deal with here is the question of setbacks for various uses from the R2 district.
Because
Because,
if somebody had I just wrote it down, if they had a 300-foot frontage going back, and you had 200 foot on both sides, you'd only have 100 foot of campground. That's pretty small.
yep,
It's very restricted.
Yeah.
And that's about a common frontage thing to buy on Route 1.
That was the,
and we haven't gotten to that.
That's when you can.
Remember, you're thinking of it in terms of the new district, in the old district. Remember, there's the new district boundaries.
I'm looking at this,
Yeah,
the size and setbacks.
yeah. We haven't gotten to that issue yet.
I just
The
read
board,
it now.
the one thing the board wanted, and these were the ideas that they were thrown out, and I think we should get to that next time, because I want to finish up space.
I want to finish it all.
Yeah, is the issue of setbacks, because you remember several of the board members were really adamant that we had to have additional setbacks from the R2 district in the rear.
There was concern about noise and smoke
Yeah.
and different, not only from campground, but from
Oh, that was
manufacturing.
everything.
And anything that was going to go in there where there were residences behind, since you don't know how much was going to be there. I'm just saying what the board had said. Go ahead.
If we're gonna do that,
Yeah.
I request to have the map, so we can physically
Yep.
see.
Sure.
Good idea.
Because I can't turn a picture where, what property line you're following, not following, or anything else, and where it divides, it doesn't divide in your setbacks, because we're just pulling it out of straws.
No, well, and we've had that at most other meetings.
We've had that at
Marty,
most
but
other
we will.
meetings.
We've had it at several meetings, but not a lot of these meetings we have.
Well, we haven't been dealing with DB1,
Me
DB2
too.
very much.
But we'll have that. Okay. Map district. D2. Okay. That's it. We're gonna close the board's deliberations tonight. I'd like to go ahead and move on the agenda. I think we can move to planners report.
Okay, let's see. Surprised we didn't have a press. The press was supposed to be here tonight.
It was.
She was here.
She was sitting there all this
That was
time.
her? Okay. Okay. Wasn't sure who she was.
She was scribbling.
Or she could be from the NSA for all we know.
No such agents.
No mistake. In any case, I think I've already gone over some of the key issues that I wanted to discuss. Remember, we gotta be at the July 8th Selectmen's meeting. EDC is gonna make their presentation, well, actually, the consultant is gonna make the presentation on the findings thus far, on the marketing study for Rumble. He's come up with some interesting things, both in interviews with the interviews and the community-wide survey. There's some very interesting stuff, more interesting stuff in his research. Not a lot of surprises, but there's some interesting ideas he's going to be presenting. It's not a complete study at this point, he's got more to go, but he wanted to give a progress report to the selectmen. And I would encourage everybody to go to listen to it, because it should be revealing.
Good question for you.
Yes.
How many times is it gonna be up here? It was here tonight, and he's commuting back and forth from Pennsylvania or Maryland or wherever. Okay.
I don't tell him how to run his business.
No, I'm just,
I tell him,
I mean,
I expect from
we need
results, the products I expect, and the contract that we have, and if he has to make 100 trips, that's his done. It's a fixed fee.
He lives here too, doesn't he, in the summer or something?
He visits here a lot. I think he stays with friends and so forth.
Okay,
So-
okay, I
So I
was-
think there's a lot more combining pleasure and work.
Okay, I mean, I'm just trying to find
I'd
out.
be concerned too, I was concerned too, Marty, until he told me, yeah, he makes these into private junkets to go, he's a big photographer, he likes to
Okay,
photograph
I was just thinking money for the dollar turn, we're paying all these trips back and forth.
No, you're not paying, you're paying for the result. That's what you're paying. Okay, thank you. So go to that meeting, that's very important to go to that meeting. The board will want, sure, the board will want to go and, because, you know, it's gonna affect whether or not we're on target. Whether we're on target, whether we're off target, or whether we need to shift focus. So far, I don't think we're on target. So, the other thing, let's see, things have slowed down on, believe it or not, private ways have slowed way down. We've had no more new exemption applications. I had a whole bunch of staff review projects coming up. I've got about 4 new businesses coming in town. I'm trying to get them all pretty much through without staff review, but some of them are going to require staff review. So we have a lot of infill that's going on right now, which is great. What else do we have? We have no real other applications except for the Terrios application coming up at this time. I had several others that I was expecting to come in, but I've not heard back from them. We also, of course, the Wellness Center is still working on their topo and their engineering in order to get their parking lot in there. And you all know that they're clear, they're fine, they're out of the floodplain, they're out of the resource protection district, so they have no DEP issues, which is great. The photography of Curtis Road has been completed, the documentation of existing conditions has been completed, so Kobe will probably start, and I've approved his location for staging area, so he's gonna probably get that logging underway. As soon as he gets him dry, period, before he gets his harvester stuck in the muck down there.
That would be good.
Yeah, that would be very bad.
Good luck. Thank you.
Not much else, actually things are slowed down very quickly this month, and it's a bit of a surprise.
Anything on the court?
Anything
On
on,
the court case?
nothing on the court case, nothing on that, and no new developments over at King's. It looks pretty good though.
No other.
They haven't gotten inside yet, yes, I know.
Did you have any comments you'd want
No, I
to
just wanted to
make
get
for the
that.
record? Okay, I saw you, I wasn't quite sure what was going on.
I want to have you email me all those stuff
Okay.
from different town meetings.
No public comment?
Make a motion, we adjourn.
You asked one other time, but
Second.
Huh, okay.
I don't know if I gave you the wrong address, but I think
You were done, right? So
Yeah, I'm
we went
done.
to no other business, no public comment, have a motion to adjourn by Roger, a second by Rich. Any discussion more?
No.
All in favor?
Yes, see my hands up?
All right, thank you. We are adjourned.
Which stuff did you want?
just any of the meetings, planning board meetings,
I don't know.
just email them.
That's, Pat,
Minutes?
No,
Yeah.
just when we have a meeting.
Can
I
you,
want to attend, but I don't know when they're at.
Can you turn this off?
I would, never got it.
can you turn that off?
Oh, yeah. Okay, have I been just sending it to Rick and?
Yeah.
Is that, oh,
Which is good, they inform me sometimes, but sometimes they don't.
oh, that's bad news. Hold on.
But no, it's way off, north on the side, down east.
Oh, okay. What should I put it as? Here, you write it down. Let's put it down here in the bottom.
That's the right number?
Yes, it is.
Okay. You did leave a message when you called me earlier today.
I know.
I had no idea who it was.
Well, I had a feeling that, oh, he's not in his office, so I won't leave a message on his office phone.
Oh.
And then I realized I don't have your home phone.
This is my phone.
Bentley and Run at AOL.com.
Bentley Aaron.
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 Yeah. Aaron.
Yeah.
We're gonna go on Aaron with Bentley.
See you guys later.
Have a good one.
All right, yeah, I'll make sure you're on notification. I am sorry about that.
Yeah, because I asked you one other time, right? Sorry for that. No, I'll be.
Yeah, Bob will be
It's
back.
Bob. He'll be back. Guys,
All right, thanks.
Nice.
Oh, I gotta turn off this.